Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular afternoon council meeting of Monday, November the 22nd. This meeting is being recorded live and is streaming on the District of Summerland YouTube channel at youtube.com, District of Summerland. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. Members of the public may access the meeting or participate in the following ways. Attend council chambers in person. If you wish to do this, you can register in advance of the meeting by contacting the corporate officer at corporateofficer@summerland.ca to ensure there is enough space in council chambers. Secondly, you can watch the meeting live or recorded on the YouTube channel. You can request to speak during the meeting if you haven't registered in advance but wish to speak during the public comment opportunities. You may be given the opportunity, time permitted. After I have provided everyone who has pre-registered the opportunity to comment, the floor will be open to those in council chambers and those on the conference line. The conference line can be accessed by dialing 778-907-2071 and entering meeting IDs 506-489-9374 and passcode 485186. Corporate officer, are there any late items? No, thank you. Could I call for approval of the agenda of council, please? Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Patton, all in favor? Thank you. And adoption of the minutes for the council meetings afternoon and special council meeting afternoon on November 8th and the special council meeting on November the 9th. Thank you, Councillor Traynor and Councillor Barkwell, all in favor? Great. I don't see Kelly yet, but I see the Okanagan Basin Water Board icon. So I would like to introduce the first of two delegations today, and that is Kelly Garcia, who is joining us from the Okanagan Basin Water Board. She's going to be speaking to us about the Collaborative Source Water Protection Program in the Okanagan. And there it is. Thank you, Kelly. Please go ahead.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me today. Okay, everybody can see my screen okay, I assume. I'm going to just go ahead here. So why am I here today? I'm going to quickly talk about the importance and benefits of source water protection and just highlight the challenges we are facing in providing safe drinking water, none of which I think will be news to you. Introduce you to a new toolkit that the OBWB has just recently launched that compiles solutions to those challenges, and then suggest what you can do as elected officials to support source water protection. So in case you're not aware, the OBWB has been around for more than 50 years. We're a non-regulatory agency that works within the entire Okanagan Basin from Armstrong to Osoyoos. And so we focus on projects and programs that benefit the watershed as a whole. Here are our current directors. So we've got Councillor Holmes currently sitting on the OBWB. So like I said, we've got 3 from North Okanagan Regional District, 3 from Central, and 3 from South. Okanagan-Similkameen Regional District. And then we've got 3 extra seats on the council. One is filled by Okanagan Nation Alliance, one by Water Supply Association of BC, and the third by our chair of the Water Stewardship Council, whoever that is at the time. So source water protection is the safeguarding of our drinking water sources, basically, which could be rivers, streams, lakes, reservoirs, springs, groundwater. It varies depending on where you are in the Okanagan and within BC. So it's not just protecting the sources, but also their contributing areas, so their watersheds. And it's the first step in this multi-barrier approach that water suppliers use to minimize impacts to human health. And why do we need source water protection, especially in the Okanagan? Because our drinking water sources can be easily contaminated. We've got multi-use watersheds and a lot of things going on in those watersheds. If they become contaminated, they're difficult or even impossible to remediate in the case of groundwater, for example. The other great thing about source water protection is that it can deliver socioeconomic and ecological services benefits. So for example, if you're restoring a riparian area in order to protect the water quality within that drinking water source, you're also having added benefits of habitat restoration and aesthetic beauty in the landscape, for example. So the challenge is, like I just said, multi-use watersheds, many different people playing, recreating, ranching, mining, forestry out there. So we've got a lot of different sources of contamination. We've got a lot of land development in the urban areas and beyond in the Okanagan, which means more impermeable surfaces. So water is not filtrating as well. And we've got climate change. I mean, we've just witnessed this over the last 6 or 8 months with heat domes and fires and floods, and those are creating more landslides and erosion and flooding, all these complicated problems that we're dealing with. And then we've got a very complicated legislative framework in BC, with many different agencies involved in regulating water. So this just shows you that complicated framework. So we've got 23 pieces of legislation that governs water in BC at the municipal, provincial, and federal level. And then of course we have unceded and traditional territories, and we're all working within. So Aboriginal rights and title on top of this different legislation here. This just shows you how we impact the watershed when we change the forest cover. So on the left, the urban watershed shows you how quickly runoff can happen when we don't have that forest to buffer the precipitation that's coming in. So in a forested landscape, you have a very stable hydrologic cycle where you can just have these nice flows that happen, and the peak flows are attenuated in those types of watersheds. And this also shows you how when we're getting rid of these riparian areas, how our infiltration changes. So a natural shoreline, you'll have up to 50% of the water percolate and infiltrate into that shore, cleaning the water before it enters the watercourse. Whereas when we have a disturbed shoreline, a lot of that water is running off directly into the watercourses. And just to mention too, that at every layer, so whether it's in the upland watershed, the rural kind of mid watershed, or the urban watershed or the main stem lakes, we've got many different sources of contamination and challenges at every one of those watershed layers, elevation layers. So just to switch gears, that's just kind of an overview of challenges and issues we're facing. So interior health requires water suppliers as a condition of their permit to have a source water protection plan. That includes 2 components, an assessment and a response plan. And I'm pretty sure Summerland is either just undergoing their source protection plan or is planning on doing it soon. There was a lot of confusion about what was required by interior health. So a lot of water suppliers had done that assessment part many years ago, but had never really moved forward to that plan part, that response plan, which is the living document and really the really important part of a source protection plan. So that brought us to this toolkit. And a main reason for this toolkit was to clarify that source protection planning process in an effort to save water suppliers time and money. So we did a lot of research. We put it all into one nice document and onto a website so that you don't have to do that yourselves, and get everybody on the same page about what is involved in a source protection plan and make the regulators happy. So they're getting consistent plans across the board from water suppliers. It compiles and delivers best practices. It has numerous case studies, about 35, I think, that allows communities to draw on the successes and lessons learned of others. It talks a lot about jurisdiction and what local governments can do within their jurisdictions to protect water sources, even if they don't have jurisdiction in where their source is located, and teaches communities how to build awareness and gain support, both political and public support. So a quick shout out to the many, many people that were involved in this Source Protection Toolkit project, including some District of Summerland staff. Our funding came from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, Interior Health Authority, City of Kelowna and City of West Kelowna, and the OBWB, and then just recently through the Healthy Watersheds Initiative. We had Lorette Aquatic Consulting as our contractors to help write this toolkit. And we had a 45-member technical advisory committee that had health agencies, provincial agencies, pretty much every local government throughout the Okanagan, First Nations groups. And we met about 6 times over the last couple of years to kind of hash out the content of this toolkit, but also to discuss the challenges facing source water protection and how we can move past those. This is what the toolkit looks like. So the first part of it, roadmap to source water protection, clarifies that source protection planning process and boils it down to 5 key steps in that process. Part 2 are the actions or the tools. And we've got 8 tools that you can see there on the screen that we really elaborate on and connect back to that source protection planning process. And then part 3 is this kind of massive addendum of information and resources. So it dives into the regulatory framework, talks about the economic benefits of source water protection so that you're able to put together a business case for funding to support source water protection, talks about the common threats and how to overcome them, and then has templates. And this is key because these, if water suppliers, the contractors that do source protection assessments use these templates, again, we're going to have that consistency and make the regulators happier that way, easier for them. So this lays out how part 1 connects to the tools. So like I said, a source protection plan has 2 main components, and you use the tools for your response plan, which is your living document that you're updating annually and then doing overhauling every 5 years. So it's your action plan for source water protection. So what can you do as an elected official? And I put a resource on the bottom here. If you haven't read this, it's an excellent resource for elected officials. It talks about drinking water quality, the whole gamut, so including treatment and that kind of thing, not just source water protection. But these are the things it talks about that an elected official can do to improve source water protection in their communities. So just having that basic understanding of why it's important and understanding what kind of water quality things you should be measuring and what you're looking for in water quantity, understanding your role and responsibility as a local government, but also the roles and responsibilities of those other agencies, and understanding why it's so important to engage with other levels of government and other stakeholders in the watersheds. Understand sustainable financing and how these different things on the screen here, asset management, full cost recovery. Believe me, I don't have a full understanding of all of these things, but this is what your staff are there for as well. But just having a general understanding of why source protection requires long-term financing and how to achieve that. And then of course, supporting your staff when they come to you and say, we want to do a source protection plan. It's in the budget here. We need some approval, or, any sort of source protection initiatives that they're working on. If you have a good understanding of why they're important, then you can support them. You've got many competing interests and things going on in your communities. So, source protection is just one of them, and I get that. So these are just the things that you can do as an elected official to really support and improve source protection in your communities. And that's it for me today. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Kelly. Good to see you again, even virtually.
Yes, nice to see you too. Thank you.
Questions, Council? Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It seems to me that one of the biggest threats to our water sources, at least Summerland, is logging. And I'm not anti-logging or anything, but I wonder who's there to protect our interests when forestry is making up their cut plans and stuff, and just to kind of make sure that our watershed protection interests are there at the table.
Yes, exactly. Good point and good question. And those are the kind of things we talked about at the technical advisory committee level when we were having those meetings. And it's challenging because you have, like I said, so many different players. So you have your Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development, but then you have your forestry companies, right? And they did just do a big overhaul of the Forest and Range Practices Act. And I haven't had a chance to kind of digest that, but I'm hoping that there are some things in there. I know that there is a requirement now to do forest landscape plans, a requirement by the forestry company, which involves more engagement and consultation with local governments. So not just referrals, but another layer of having to look at the entire landscape and how what they're doing impacts water, especially in community watersheds. So I'm hoping that if we can continue talking about these issues through projects like this, we can make some progress. But these challenges are huge for sure.
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, and thank you, Kelly. So looking at the toolkit and hearing some of the case studies, such as the Greater Vernon Duto Creek one, it seems to me that the Technical Advisory Committee is a pretty key piece to making all this work. And especially when you look at a watershed such as ours, where we do have so many different users. So just following on Councillor Barkwell's question really is that how do we get the forestry, mining interests, these sort of companies that we have no authority over to the table, and I guess what's their interest in participating on something being led by a local government, and how do we ensure it's effective and sustainable and all that sort of thing. It's a kind of a loaded question for you.
No, it's a good question, and I know that it's difficult, but a lot of these companies are actually participating now because they really have to in order to obtain their social license to operate, in a sense. So they, times are changing a bit there, where if they do get an invitation to participate on a technical advisory committee, they often do accept that invitation. So I believe you are just starting the source protection planning process in Summerland. And so there would be a technical advisory committee struck, as there is, say, in West Kelowna, for example. I participate on that committee. And so once or twice a year, they have meetings and they have their forestry folks in the room there with maps. And they talk about, everybody just gives an update about what's going on in the watershed. So West Kelowna talks about infrastructure improvements and things they're going to be working on. And there's the forest or the ranching ministry, FLNRORD, but they have the ranching branch. And then there's like Rob Dinwiddie's there usually. And then the forestry companies are there. And plus, I know that the ranching community also has annual meetings. There's a lot of meetings going on. And that's another reason why this project I thought was good, is because we kind of need to have a bit more consistency and fewer meetings, and have one big meeting with those players in the room. So you have your local source protection planning processes that are going on, but they need to kind of fit in the overall thing that's going on in the valley as well, because it's a lot of times the same people that are at these meetings. So I think it's strike your technical advisory committee, know who to invite, and I can help with that because, like I said, I sit on quite a few technical advisory committees up and down the valley, so I can help connect you to the appropriate players if your staff don't know who they are, which they probably do. And then you have to just consistently have those meetings. So in the North Okanagan, they meet with their technical advisory committee twice a year, and they have a watershed tour, pre-COVID, obviously. So it's just that consistency and perseverance to get them in the room.
Any other questions? I just have one, Kelly, and it has to do with your webinar series. Are those being recorded and posted on your website?
Yes, they are. Thank you for bringing that up. So we've had, it's on sourcewaterprotectiontoolkit.ca, and then there's a webinar tab. They're all there.
Great. Well, I don't see any more hands raised, so I'll thank you, Kelly, for taking time out of your day to bring us up to date on the source protection toolkit.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye for now. Second delegation today is Sergeant Preston with the RCMP quarterly update for Q3 of 2021.
Click the button there. Thanks again for having me here today, Madam Mayor and Councillors. I just wanted the purpose of me being here today, I would like to go over our budget resourcing situation, also identify, just sort of highlight once again our priority issues and initiatives that we do have, and then also to go through the quarter 3 statistics on certain crime types. So our budget as we are right now, we're currently sitting at 57%, which our benchmark is 58%. So although we're under budget right now, it is something that for me experiencing that we're typically a lot lower. So one of the things that I've noted is our overtime expenditures is at year to date for this fiscal period is 75,535. Reason for that, if I get into the resourcing, is our resourcing, we should be at 9 and we're currently at 7. During this particular quarter, we were at 6. So, and of course, July, August being our busiest months, it was quite challenge doing what we do during this time on those kind of limited resources. So I had to call in overtime members, which that typically is not that difficult, but with the wildfires and everything else that's going on and other detachment shortages that their experiences, it was a challenge, but we got through it. If we get into our calls for service, actually, you know what, first off, before I get into calls for service, I'll just sort of highlight the priority issues that we have for the 2021-22 year. And that's in no particular order, but it's traffic and speeding, crime reduction in terms of property crime, increasing police visibility, and bylaws. So with our files, with our calls for service this quarter, we're at 939, and that was actually 5% reduction compared to the same quarter in 2020. But what's hurting us is that calls for service in general that's increased from the year to date. So right now we're at 10%, and I think in quarter 2 we're at 23% increase and 20% in quarter 1. So we're going in the right direction. We're dropping it down. It is at 10% now. So even though when we look at the 939, I think the reason for the decrease in calls for service this quarter compared to the last quarter is probably just our resource numbers. Our resource numbers are down. That means a lower number of proactive type investigations that the members would have gotten themselves into. So it's only, like I say, it's only 5% reduction, but the reduction definitely helped if we were to look into the property crime part of things. The very bottom of the percentage change from 2020 to 2021 was only 1% increase. Much better than when it was before. Year to date, it's still at 19%. I think I need my glasses here now. 19%, but the increase, the 1% definitely helped because in quarter 2, we were at 36% increase for property-related crime. Property-related crime, I can say quite confidently that those numbers are going to stabilize and they're going to get better. We do have an individual that was incarcerated September 29th, and that individual accounted for much of the B&Es and property crime, even though they're not necessarily, I think this particular individual was 23 files that they're documented with this particular individual, but this person is incarcerated. So for the next quarter, I do anticipate the numbers going down. He is, this individual, like I say, although not necessarily carded on a particular file, he would have been a possible suspect, but it wasn't linked to the particular files. Let's see here. The crime against person, violent crime files have increased. That's what it is, something that's difficult for me to comment on because we're going from, you know, whether it's domestic violence or anything like that, it's hard to gauge or predict either a reduction or an increase. So, but overall, we're year to date, we're at an 18% increase. But increases, like I say, I would say when you have an increase of calls for service, you're going to have an increase in everything else. So that's kind of to be expected. Another part of the increase has been my change in, I would say, kind of the leadership here, in that my concept is to document everything. So maybe in the past, before, where there was maybe a phone call to the attachment asking certain questions or doing certain things, or they wouldn't have maybe generated a file, whereas my kind of idea is let's capture as much information as we possibly can. So moving forward, those numbers should even stabilize the more time we go down the road. And that's,
Are you able to take a question at this point?
sure.
Councillor Trainer.
Hi, you had mentioned that a person was arrested and that person was likely related to quite a few property crimes. When you talk about property crimes, do you mean like smaller crimes, like breaking into a vehicle or breaking into a home?
Yeah, it includes auto theft, bicycle theft, break and enter, business, residence, or other, mischief to property, theft, other. So
Something that a single individual could commit.
correct.
The reason I'm asking is just because down where I live in Trout Creek, we've had quite a few thefts over the last while, but these are more like bigger items, like trailers that are stolen in the middle of the night and vehicles. I'm just wondering if he would be, or he or she would be related to that, or if that's a whole other issue.
That particular person, I would probably say isn't linked to that.
Okay.
So.
Okay, and are you seeing an issue with bigger items stolen in Summerland?
Not really. I mean, if you think bigger, if we talk auto theft, I mean, just this quarter, we were at 53% increase. So it does fluctuate from quarter to quarter. And that's one thing that we looked at. We don't want to, I don't want to focus too much on these numbers, because when they do get, when you look at the 300% increase of break and enter other, that's going from 1 file to 4. So those numbers are just going to jump and look big when we're talking about 1 or 4 files. So
Okay.
in a 3-month period.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing I did forget to mention, and when we talk about our budget, we talk about overtime expenditures. Without going into depth, there was one particular file that went to court, and it cost it was in court for over 12 days, and it cost a considerable amount of money unnecessarily, if you ask me. But it was things that were, these officers were subpoenaed to court and had to appear to court, and there was quite a bit of overtime that was spent on that.
Councillor Carlson has a question.
Those are taxpayer dollars. Just one thing. I'm wondering, since we spoke last, I think it's been changed where if I phone during non-detachment hours, so if I phone at 5 o'clock, I now have an opportunity to actually know where someone I can actually talk to that's going to answer my phone. Has that caused an increase, or has that made things better and easier for officers to actually respond when they're on duty, so people don't phone 911 or phone nobody?
I think I'd say a little bit of both. Now we are actually experiencing where the clerks come in on Monday morning and they're not hit up with 8 phone messages and things that occurred on Friday night or Saturday morning or anything like that. So that has definitely gotten better. So whether it would change the number of calls, that may have, it depends on how it was handled at the clerk office there, whether it was just because as soon as it goes to dispatch, as soon as they hit that number to go to it's a file generated. So, whereas if it was the message left on Monday, it may be a simple phone call and, oh, the matter was dealt with, or we don't need anything. So, okay, so then it's not a file.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Are you getting many complaints via like social media, threats on social media towards, citizens and stuff like that? Do you hear much about that, or is it getting better, worse?
Social media is something that we, we try to avoid and not get too caught up in it. It's definitely not fact-based or anything like that. So people can seem to just say what they want. So there is definitely, there's the criminal harassment, there's the harassing communications, and sometimes threats that we do investigate. So they are a real thing now. So.
I am going to ask that we let Sergeant Preston finish his presentation so that he's not answering questions that are answered later in his.
No, I'm done. So
Oh, you're done.
any questions? Yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering if Summerland has a currently is operating the Citizens on Patrol. I know that it had sort of fallen away and then was ramping up again. I'm just wondering if they're currently active, and if not, whether there's maybe a plan to reach out to some folks who seem to be quite keen on helping keep our community safe to make that happen.
Yeah, there's not, there still is the Citizens on Patrol, but whether how active they are, and it's usually, it's not run necessarily by me or the detachment. It is, it's out of, I think, Penticton. There's an individual that kind of oversees it all. But they use our detachment to conduct their meetings and all that, and we assist them whenever possible. But yeah, because of COVID, it's pretty much not really been there. So, but to answer your other question, we would love for people to get involved. I've said it. I've said it to many that we will take all the help we can. Obviously, what comes with that, though, is that to be Citizens on Patrol, there was a whole background checks, and they do certain, and that takes time. I don't even know how long, but it's not like tomorrow you'll get it done. Like it's lengthy.
But the opportunity is there, so if folks were interested, they could contact you and maybe start fresh.
Absolutely, yeah.
Councillor Holmes.
Yes, thank you. So one of your priorities for the coming year is traffic, you said. So I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a bit on that, on what exactly that covers. And also connected to that, Superintendent Hunter was saying about how we can probably expect a lot more traffic coming through on the highway here, because with the Coquihalla closed for the foreseeable future, all that traffic will be coming through Penticton, and I guess by extension up through Summerland. So what does traffic include the highway, or is that and can we expect to see extra resources as Superintendent said there would be on Highway 3 up through here as well?
Yeah, I'm definitely watching that very closely and monitoring the situation, and we are in talks and communication with the Sergeant Ryan McLeod, who does head up the BC Highway Patrol. So we are, I haven't really seen anything that's been like an increase in traffic, but traffic complaints, if it is in our area, it does come, even if it's on the highway, does come through us. So, I mean, traffic's consistently approximately about 10% of our calls for service. So in this particular quarter, at 110 calls for service. So that would be vehicle speeding, swerving all over the road, impaireds, that kind of thing. That I think even accidents might be, no, I think accidents are separate, but typically, yeah, obviously we encourage, there's media releases all the time that encourage people to call in unsafe drivers, and so we get those quite a bit. Now, sorry, trying to think if there was anything else.
Just with the expectation of added traffic on Highway 97 coming through Summerland because of the closure of the Coke, could do you think we'll have some extra resources for?
Well, I have, like I say, monitoring it closely, but then when we look at July and August, and of course in our really busy summer months, and we were managing on 5-6 members, we are up to 7, and there's no foreseeable vacation times, et cetera, and all that. So typically the call volume drops, so we should be able to manage that. Obviously, if it comes to the point there, we do have our traffic services or our BC Highway Patrol members. There's 3 of them that do start and end their shifts in Summerland. So that obviously helps us, and they do quite a bit of work here too, so.
Councillor Barkwell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You sort of touched on this. Staffing is down to 7 from 9. What does the future look like for staffing? Are we ever going to have a full complement or?
Not good. We've been told that the resourcing situation is don't expect anybody anytime soon. And I did manage to get 2. We currently have 3 in the process of retiring out, and so we did go from we were quite fortunate to go from 6 to 7, and yeah, we were fortunate.
Any other questions, Council? Okay, thank you, Sergeant Preston,
Okay, thank
for
you.
the update. Kendra, do we need to receive information from the delegations? No, okay. It's not in their report, so. All right. So now on to public comment opportunity, the first one. 15 minutes maximum. If you're going to speak, please introduce yourself and give your civic address before beginning your 2-minute remarks. Anyone?
We do have Brian Wilkie registered to speak on Zoom.
Thank you. Brian, if you could unmute, perfect. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'd like to speak about the solar project. I have just 6 brief points. I think the district of Summerland is too small to take on a project of this size. We have much better places to spend our limited tax dollars, like our infrastructure of roads, vehicles, and perhaps even better salaries for elected officials and staff. We'd be much better off using the land that they're going to use for this solar project for houses, which would generate more revenue for the district. And it's been my experience that most projects of this size, including the solar project, they always have cost overruns. Sometimes 2 or 3 times they have cost overruns. And I suspect that this project will be no different than any of the other projects. And when this project is over and done, we'll be alarmed at how much money we've actually spent on this investment. And I suspect that I worry, I guess, that the residents of Summerland will remember this project when it comes time to the next election. I don't know, but it just has not been, it's just the wrong project for Summerland. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Brian, for your comments. Okay, Marianne, please come to the podium.
Hi, Marianne McDonald, 6505 McDonald Place. And it too is about the solar project, and I just need some clarification. I see that both options are significantly over budget, but there's an allotment of $980,000 for district connections. And I want to know if that's over and above the dedicated $947,000 that was set aside for the budget, or from Summerland for the project. If that's the case, then we're really taking 1.8 million out of the budget, out of our budget to do this project. And secondly, it's my understanding that any project with a negative net present value shouldn't go forward. And it's always been considered a poor investment. And I see that there is a net present value in the negative for this project as well. And I understand that the discount rate is derived from the cost of the capital required to invest. And I just want to make sure that those are all right. And the other question I have, or statement, I should say, is that I see that the budget for roadworks this past year was only 280,000 plus or minus a few dollars here and there. So I see there's more money going to a project that hasn't even got off the ground yet. Anyway, that's my comments. Thank you.
Could I have your civic address, please, Marianne? I know that it's here somewhere, but,
Yeah, I thought I said it, 6505 McDonald Place.
oh, thank you. And Brian, did you say your civic address? If so, I apologized, I missed it. Did you get it, Kendra? Yes, good, thank you.
You got it all right? I forgot to give
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yes, she
Thank
says
you.
she has it okay.
Yeah, I
Thank
sent
you.
it in. When I sent it in, I had that there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we won't be responding to your questions at this point, but certainly they may be asked and answered in the upcoming presentation. So thank you, Marianne. And you didn't have anyone else by phone? Okay, thank you, Kendra. So we're on to item 7.1, the first business item, the financial results as of September 30th, 2021, and this is a third quarter update. Renee? Oh, there you are.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. The first 9 months of 2021 have been very comparable to previous years for the municipality. Operational revenue is on track across all funds, with a majority of actual values surpassing the budgeted figures. Sewer revenue is the only category below the 75% of the third quarter projected level, and that's attributable to year-end adjustments that will be recorded for actuarial earnings on our MFA debt, as well as a transfer between funds. Then on the expense side, all of the cost centers are below 75% of the anticipated overall budgeted amounts. Many of the variances are simply timing differences, with the related work being done in the past month and being invoiced prior to year end. Specifically, the lowest cost center is the general fund debt and transfers. And again, this is attributed to the MFA debt payments for which principal and interest aren't due until last month in October or this month, December, both falling into the fourth quarter. And all other expense cost centers are within 45% or higher, the majority having expenses that will fall into fourth quarter invoicing. Then on the capital fund, the year-to-date spending is just over 10% in comparison to the budget. This is a lot lower than expected, with a number of contributing factors such as delays due to staff turnover, unsuccessful grant applications, or the project simply not being required. It's anticipated that a large portion of the invoicing for the projects currently underway will be processed in the final months of 2021. But overall, looking at everything, the district is in a healthy financial position and there aren't any concerns that were identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Council, do you have questions of Renee? Okay, no questions. Thanks again.
Thank you.
7.2 is the solar and storage project, engineering procurement and construction request for proposals update. And we will begin with our CAO Graham Stack.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have a presentation for council today, and I'll just let them load that up. I'll do the first number of slides, and I'll turn it over to our Director of Utilities to do a few slides, and a couple others will also speak to this presentation before we're done. So the purpose of today's presentation is to provide council with an update on the solar and storage project in response to the district's engineering procurement construction request for proposals for the project. We're seeking feedback from council on 4 options to determine the future of the project. Next slide, please. So in terms of background, the solar and storage project has been identified as one of council's strategic priorities. That's falling under the umbrella of alternative energy. The purpose of the project is to establish a well-functioning solar energy generation and battery storage facility that strengthens the district's electrical utility. The project was initiated in 2016, and it's predominantly grant funded, as I will discuss more in a moment. Next slide. From 2019 onward, a multitude of studies and background work have been undertaken, which have outlined in further detail our understanding of the project and are also expressed in the report that you have at your fingertips. So these reports include financial analysis, land appraisal and land use assessment, environmental inventory, geotechnical assessment, phase 1 and phase 2 site investigations, and a system impact and interconnection study. Additionally, the initial site selection discussion occurred with council in 2019, ultimately confirming the current site as the preferred location. Earlier this year, council also reconfirmed their support for the project in its chosen location and directed staff to start reviewing the feasibility of an eco-village at the site that would complement the solar and storage project. Next slide, please. Community consultation and engagement was also taken seriously and took place over the lifespan of the project thus far, beginning in 2017, with community conversations attended by over 100 residents who provided support for the project. In 2019, a community update meeting was held at the Center Stage Theatre with over 100 attendees and 82 survey respondents. This was followed by a committee of the whole meeting in July 2020, where the public was invited to make representation to council regarding the results of the detailed site analyses. June 2021, representatives from District Council and staff met on site with elected officials from the Penticton Indian Band to discuss both the solar and battery project and the Eco-Village project. In addition to the above activities, there is a dedicated website link on the district page that was created to share information about the project. Staff have also provided information on the project to the community at a wide range of public events, including budget open houses, Earth Week activities, through our newsletter and project email list. Next slide, please. The project has received 2 grants to date. The first was obtained in 2016 and was intended for the feasibility study, which was completed in 2017. Additionally, a $6 million grant was obtained through the federal gas tax program for the engineering, procurement, and construction of a 1 megawatt solar array and 2 megawatt battery storage. In addition to the above grant funding, $980,000 has been allocated from the Electric Utility Capital Reserve to make the necessary system connections and tie-ins associated with the project. Next slide, please. So talking about the procurement, the RFP for the construction phase of the solar and storage project was issued July 21st, 2021, and it closed on September 7th, 2021. The project is complex, and for that reason, it requires significant speciality in the field, given the connection between the production of solar power and the battery storage. To ensure the project's success, in consultation with ATCO, who is our owner's engineer on the project, the district required that bidders on the RFP, first of all, demonstrate that the lead or primary proponent has completed either a 1 megawatt DC solar or 1 megawatt hour battery energy solar system, sometimes referred to as the BESS, battery energy solar system, within the last 5 years prior, and that the lead or primary proponent and 1 subcontractor have the combined experience of both a 1 megawatt DC solar and a 1 megawatt hour BESS within the immediate 5 years prior. So these criteria successfully narrowed the field to bidders with the right combination of expertise and demonstrated complex project management to, first of all, know what the true costs are. Second of all, to commit to secure pricing. And third of all, to be well positioned for success if the project proceeds. In total, 3 proposals were received. However, 1 proposal was subsequently disqualified as it did not meet certain requirements of the RFP. Next slide, please. The 2 remaining proposals were assessed using the following published criteria: approach and methodology, proposed equipment and performance specifications, project schedule and delivery, experience and key personnel, sustainability considerations, innovation, value added, and obviously the price. As indicated here on table 1 on the slide, proponent A of the 2 proponents emerged as the preferred proponent following the evaluation criteria set out in the RFP, scoring higher in both the technical components but also in the overall lower pricing. The overall score for the 2 proposals based on the evaluation, as you can see, proponent A at 108.35, proponent B at 70.45. Next slide, please. So, however, we ended up doing the RFP. We did encounter that both proposals submitted by the proponents came in well over the allocated budget for the project. Proponent A, the preferred proponent that I spoke to, also submitted 2 options for the district that meet the specifications, which will be described more fully later in the presentation. The first is called their base design, which involves a total bid price of just over $9 million. The second is called the augmented design, with a total bid price of about $8.6 million. As noted earlier in the slides, the total budget allocated for this project, including funds from both the grant funding and utility reserve, is $6,980,000. However, $980,000 of these funds are set aside for tie-ins and associated connectivity to our power system. So as a result, the core budget for the full build-out of the system is $6 million, and this is the figure that we're going to use to highlight the budget shortfall today. Bid pricing is good for 90 days, which means we need to make a decision regarding the bids and be able to communicate that by the end of the day, December 6th, or pricing will likely increase due to market pressures. Next slide. In consultation with ATCO, our owner's engineer for the project, the reasons for the price escalation we are seeing result from a multitude of factors. The initial financial analysis for this project occurred in October 2019 as part of the grant conditions under a much different pre-pandemic global economic climate, and therefore reflected dollars consistent with the solar and battery industry at that time. Since this time, the industry has witnessed significant demand-driven price increases. The pandemic has further exacerbated the issue through choked supply chains, labor impacts, and the industry has also witnessed increased shipping costs and record-setting inflation. We are observing similar substantive price escalations and supply chain issues in a number of the district's recent projects. These range from securing fencing even for the temporary dog park, the price escalations at the Eisentalk Dam outlet pipe replacement, and even the operational procurement of power transformers for maintenance and renewal of the district's electrical systems. Recently, one district electrical utility supplier highlighted the global challenges with supply chains, indicating, and I quote, "Metals used for transformers have run into very short supply. Core steel pricing has been skyrocketing, and it's expected to continue." So we come to the options. Now we'll go to the next slide. And I'll turn it over momentarily to our Director for Utilities, but I'll just speak to this slide and then go there. In the exploration of options to remedy the budget shortfall, staff did have preliminary discussions with the funder to determine the potential for additional new funds to support the project given the cost escalations and other factors not anticipated at the time of the original application. Unfortunately, the funder has indicated that no additional grant funding can be allocated to the project. In fact, the reapplication for the project with increased funding request would have to undergo reassessment against other proposals from the original vetting, which would result in the loss of the district's $6 million grant award if that reconsideration did not go in our favor. However, the district could choose to request an alteration to the scope of the project from the funder using the same amount of funding from the grant award. As a result, staff has prepared 4 options for council's consideration to determine how best to move forward. And finally, for my part, I just wanted to say for clarity, no contract has been awarded yet, and the preferred proponent and negotiation will not proceed until we have direction from council. It should be noted that we are not seeking council direction on the evaluation of the proposals, as these have been evaluated by staff in accordance with the criteria outlined in the RFP. I will now turn it over to the Director of Utilities, Mr. Jeremy Storval, to speak to the specific options. Jeremy.
Thank you, CAO Stat. Hello, Council. So for the first option here, the project would be awarded to the preferred proponent and would require a budget amendment of an additional just over 4.4 million, bringing revised budget to just over 10.4 million to address the budget shortfall. Please note that this figure includes a 10% contingency for unknown and peripheral costs should they come up. Although the RFP was clear that it is the intent of the district to enter into a full turnkey, date certain and fixed project, EPC contract, that is engineering, procurement and construction contract. This contingency is recommended by staff to reduce price uncertainty, which may be encountered if this option is chosen. In this option, the scope of the work would include the following: upgrades to the access road and service gate, site grading and tree removal, installation of solar racking and foundations, installation of installation of solar panels totaling 1 megawatt, including their inverters, wiring, and all the other associated components. Also, installation of a 2 megawatt, 6.8 megawatt hour battery energy storage system, including all associated enclosures, thermal management systems, inverters, concrete pads, and all other components, such as the battery management system. It also includes security fencing. Next slide, please. In this option, the design includes a BESS that is large enough on the date of commissioning to accommodate for battery degradation over the entire life of the project, so as to meet the district's and the funder's specifications. As a result, there is more capital outlay in the beginning of the project, which has corresponding effect on the anticipated internal rate of return, which will be discussed later on. The district budget impact of this option is shown in Table 2 of the report, which is on page 6 of the report, and is also here for ease of reference. Should council wish to proceed with this option, a proposed resolution is provided on this slide and is summarized at the end of the presentation as well. Next slide, please. Option 2. The project would be awarded to the preferred proponent, again, for what they are terming their augmented design. This option would also require a budget amendment, but it is slightly less than option 1 and comes to an additional 3.8, just over 3.8, almost 3.9 million, bringing revised budget to 9.8 or 9.9 million. Again, this includes a 10% contingency for unknown and peripheral costs should they come up. We call this the pre-augmentation budget, as it is the money needed now and does not include funds when we actually do the augmentation 10 years from now. In terms of the scope of this option, the project would proceed with the same overall vision as outlined in option 1, but the BESS would be initially sized at 5.4 megawatt hours. The technical performance requirements would still be met, and there would be some upfront capital cost avoidance over option 1. Battery degradation would be managed by adding batteries at the 10-year mark. The cost to install the batteries at the 10-year mark is estimated at $605,300, which is shown at the bottom of the table there, close to the bottom. That brings the revised total prospective project budget to $10.5 million, which includes money that would be required at year 10. To be clear though, as part of this option, a budget amendment would not include these costs as they would be incurred 10 years from now. Table 3 in the report is reproduced here for your convenience, and it's on page 8 of the report. Next slide, please. Should council wish to proceed with the option, a proposed resolution is here, which again is summarized at the end of our slide deck along with the other options. Option 3. Option 3 entails terminating the current RFP based on the overages on the bids received. Additional discussions would be pursued with the funder to determine if the grant could be utilized to support a downsized project. These discussions are necessary because the funder selected the project based on certain criteria, and if we change those, we need to get their permission or risk losing the $6 million grant. If approved by the grant funder, a new RFP would be prepared with a project that is designed to fit entirely within the $6 million budget ceiling, revised downward to allow for a built-in 10% contingency as well, inclusive of all build costs and inclusive of taxes. For clarity, in this option, the district would still allocate its $980,000 portion for the tie-ins and the other electric utility related requirements. Okay. The benefit of this option is that it ensures budget certainty while still seeing a similar type of project moving forward that tests solar power production and battery storage on a utility scale for the community. And we realize those associated benefits such as peak shaving. Conversely, existing staff and consultant time spent on the production of the current RFP process would be a sunk cost. And it should be anticipated that even a reduced project will add significant time to the overall construction horizon for the project. Of note, in the original application for the project to the funder, the district conveyed that unforeseen project cost pressures could result in a need to rescope the project. Further, the current grant agreement outlines some consideration for how a rescope request would be actuated. Staff has had exploratory discussions with the funder for further clarity and to understand the feasibility of this option for council. The funder has indicated that many projects in their portfolio are experiencing similar cost challenges at this time, given the impacts to the supply chain, inflation, and the pandemic overall. A rescope request would begin with a formal written rationale from the district as to why the project requires a scope adjustment, including technical details as to what is being proposed in place of the original concept. The funder has informed us that rescope requests fall into either a major or minor category based on how much the vision of the project is changing. For example, a change in the location of the project or an indefinite timeline or a change in the type or kind of project from the original vision would generally be considered a major change. A minor change in scope would be one that still endeavors to achieve the same type of project, maintains relevance for the community, and retains in large part the original elements of the project and its build location, with specific timelines and tangible construction steps. Once a written submission is made, a technical review committee determines the scope change, if the scope change is a major or a minor. If minor, a relatively quick decision can be made with the funder, and it was within the discretion of the technical committee with the funder. If the change is major, it is forwarded to a formal management committee comprised of representation from UBCM, the provincial government, and the federal government, who ultimately render a final decision. Next slide, please. If this option was pursued, staff would work with the owner's engineer for the project to craft a submission to the funder. The closer the project is to its original vision, and the higher the probability of an affirmation from the funder that it is a minor change in scope. The intent would likely involve crafting technical specifications for a project that is roughly half the size of the solar and half the size of the battery system. Proximity to the proposed eco-village would be highlighted, as would efforts already taken to prepare the site and conduct environmental assessments, etc. High-level financial analysis would need to be undertaken to estimate the rate of return, tailoring certain elements as necessary to maximize the scope down solar and battery storage concept. Final technical submissions and specifications would be estimated in such a way as to be contained entirely within the $6 million budget plus 980 allocation from the district, inclusive of costs already absorbed and a 10% contingency. Should council wish to proceed with this, there is a proposed motion on the screen, which will be again summarized at the end. Thank you. Option 4. Option 4 would place the solar plus storage project on pause and enable staff the time to explore additional grant opportunities to address the budget shortfall. Under this option, staff will continually monitor available grant funding, as well as market conditions, and update council accordingly. Formal notice will be given to the funder that the project is on hold and that the timeline committed to is unlikely to be met, which in turn may result in risk to the original grant award. Communications would be crafted in such a way as to explain the situation to residents and to describe the intentions of the district. The project will remain as a strategic priority of council unless otherwise directed, and if a stackable grant could be located to bridge the funding gap, then staff would return to council for a decision. Next slide, please. And if council wishes to proceed with that option, a proposed resolution is on the screen. So at this point, we will discuss economics of the two available EPC bid options. Matt Wright, supervising engineer at ATCO, will walk us through the analysis. And Matt, if your microphone is on, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Jeremy. This table provides a side-by-side comparison of the financial analysis done in 2019 by Fractal and the two bid options Jeremy just reviewed. Fractal used a proprietary algorithm to calculate the IRR and the payback. Those calculations were based on a 20-year life of the BESS system and a 35-year life of the solar PV system. With BESS and solar components now more fully understood through the Summerland's RFP process, ATCO has calculated the estimated IRR and payback based on the information provided and our internal practices in collaboration with Summerland management team. The results in the table were calculated using a Homer simulation software. The software is used to support ATCO's business analysis for some of our renewable facilities and is an industry standard tool. The modeling was done over a 25-year period, which I said is common, and we've used that at ATCO as well. The life of the BESS and the solar PV system will likely continue past 25-year point following the degradation curves of those assets. It should be noted that our analysis does not include a battery augmentation at year 10, as the software cannot accommodate that level of analysis. Our view is that the price of batteries and economic conditions are difficult to predict at the year 10 point. I would like further to note that this is only a simulation. Real world conditions and how Summerland operates and maintains the system can greatly affect the battery life and performance. I'd like to bring your attention to the first column of the table. The capital cost of the batteries and solar system are the first two rows. The next row shows the operations and maintenance costs. Note that the O&M costs are a year-by-year average. Below this row, we have a simulated internal rate of return and simulated payback. Following the columns for your comparison, we have shown that the estimated Summerland Commission, for your comparison, we have shown the estimate Summerland Commission fractal to complete in 2019. Next column shows the base design, which, as Jeremy mentioned in his slides, for a 1 megawatt solar, 2 megawatt battery with 6.8 megawatt hours of energy BESS system. The final column is for the augmentation option, which is for the solar PV of 1 megawatt, a 2 megawatt battery with 5.4 megawatt hours of energy. I note that the 2019 analysis, which shows an IRR of 29.68%, while the base and augmentation options were with their escalated pricing are estimated at 6.08% and 7.16% respectively. This results in an estimated 13.3 and 12.1 year payback. Thank you, and I'll pass it off to the Summerland CFO for the next slide.
So in examining the 4 proposed options, options 1 and 2 are similar in the fact that although both keep within the parameters of established funding criteria, they come with a significantly higher project cost than originally budgeted. Options 1's calculated budget shortfall is $4.4 million, while option 2's calculated budget shortfall is $3.9 million. Council could choose to fund these shortfalls through one or a combination of the following suggestions. The first suggested funding source is to utilize electric capital reserves. The proposed 2022 to 2026 electric capital budget will be reviewed and deliberated by Council tomorrow, November 23rd, starting at 9 a.m. The proposed budget includes $18.7 million in capital projects over the 5-year period, including this project. Reserve levels at the end of 2026 are projected to be $2.1 million. Council may wish to allocate the full amount of projected reserves to augment the calculated budget shortfalls for this project. Should Council choose this approach, there will still be a funding shortfall between $2.3 and $1.8 million, depending on which option Council chooses. Full utilization of reserves is not recommended by staff, as it would leave the district in a position where if an emergent situation were to arise, we would potentially not have the required funding to address it. So an alternative approach Council may wish to consider is to allocate a portion of the reserves while leaving a portion in case of emergency. The second suggested funding source is to postpone approved capital projects. Council could resolve to postpone or defer capital projects within the approved 5-year capital plan in order to free up enough reserve funds to fund the budget shortfall of this project. This approach, if done without any additional funding solutions, again, is not recommended by staff, as although it may fund the budget shortfall, it could leave a significant gap over a 2 to 3 year period where there'll be no funding to do any additional projects. The third suggested funding source is debt financing. Council could resolve to fund all or a portion of the budget shortfall through debt. If Council chooses to move forward with debt financing, the district will be required to follow the provisions of the community charter to ensure the process is legal and provides residents with an opportunity to provide their input. The borrowing process is extremely prescribed and detailed and can take up to 3 to 6 months to complete in its entirety, which would add to the overall timing of the project and could potentially result in additional cost increases due to procurement challenges being seen in today's environment and discussed earlier in the presentation. One key item to note with this process is that should Council choose to utilize debt financing, voter assent is required and can be obtained through either an alternative approval process or a referendum. Now, there are numerous debt borrowing scenarios that could be presented based on options 1 and 2. One scenario is presented in the Council report is based on borrowing $4.472 million at an estimated interest rate of 2.5%. A 20-year borrowing would require an estimated electrical rate increase of 2.3%, which works out to about $38.41 annually to an average customer that uses 900 kilowatt hours a month. A 25-year borrowing under the same terms would require an estimated electrical rate increase of 1.95%, which would cost the average customer $32.57 annually. Next slide, please. Like options 1 and 2, options 3 and 4 are similar from a financial perspective, as both do not require additional funding from the district. Under option 3, the district would terminate the current RFP due to the budget overages received in the bids. We would need to engage the funder in order to determine whether a scaled down project would be accepted. If accepted, a new RFP would be prepared with a project scope designed to fit within the $6 million budget, with contingencies incorporated into that $6 million. Option 4 would result in the district putting the project on pause. There would not be an immediate need to allocate additional resources to the project. However, if paused, there is a possibility that the funding agreement could be voided and the costs spent to date may need to be funded through the electrical capital reserve. Next slide.
Is that it for slides? Is that it? One more, there we go. Yeah, thank you. So that wraps up our presentation, and we've just put the last slide up here in terms of the summary of those motions. Depending on which of those 4 options council may wish to explore further, of course, time for discussion and certainly take any direction or other consideration from council at this time. Thank you very much.
Okay, council, who wants to start us off? Okay, Councillor Holmes, thank you very much for starting us off.
Thank you. So I don't really want to walk away from $6 million. And I like to note that we can't spend that money on anything else like roads or councillor salaries or anything like that. It's this or nothing. At the same time, I don't really want to budget $3 or $4 million that we never planned to budget, not when there's needs elsewhere for that infrastructure. So for me, looking at either altering the project or finding additional funding, so options either 3 or 4, but then I have some questions regarding both those 2 options, if I may.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So when talking about a major or minor change in the project, if the funder doesn't, if it's deemed a major change and the funder doesn't accept a major change, would we have an option then to go back and tweak the proposal to make it a minor change, which they might be able to accept?
Thank you. Through the mayor, Councillor Holmes. I think we would have to explore that a little further with the funder to see if they'd be willing to do some back and forth in that regard. But based on the level of collaboration that we've seen from them, I suspect that that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think that's key. I think there's going to have to be some back and forth there to find some common ground. And I would hope that with the world we're in right now, that the government would be accommodating. So I just note that under option 3 in the report, a new RFP would be prepared for projects that's designed to fit entirely within the $6 million budget ceiling. I'm just wondering if you could explain, if got an explanation about what that means exactly. I mean, wasn't the last one designed to fit entirely within the $6 million? And how do we make sure the same thing doesn't happen?
Thank you, Councillor Holmes, through the mayor. Yes, the original amount was expected to fit within the $6 million. Actually, we expected to have a little bit left over, but of course, market has totally changed now. So what we'd likely do is we'd speak to some of the proponents. We may speak to some vendors, get some budgetary pricing together, have as many conversations as we can with those in the industry, see what they're expecting for the next year. And we'd be working with our owner's engineer to come up with a scope of work that would fall within the 6 million. We may word the RFP such that it's more focused on the price point that we have for budget instead of the specifications. So we throw down our specifications and say, this is what we'd like to see. However, this is our budget ceiling. So there's some strategy that way, but we'd effectively be talking to industry and coming up with a scope of work that we can fit within.
Just to follow up on that then. So, yeah, one thing I noticed in the last RFP, it said it wasn't disclosing the budget, but I think anybody who could read a press release, knew exactly what our budget was. And so can't we, rather than go out and ask how much for a 1 megawatt solar, 2 megawatt storage, can't we go out and ask what can we get for $6 million?
Yeah, through the mayor, yes. Yes, we can do that. We can word the RFP such that we're focusing more on the budget pricing than the actual specifications. So, yeah,
Okay.
Definitely an option.
All right, thanks. That's all for now.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for all of the options and the presentation. I agree with Councillor Holmes. I think that what we need to think about here, though, is the goal of this whole project and the entire reason we're even continuing this conversation that started, I might add, 6 years ago when battery storage was still this new concept and a new thing, was to strengthen the district electrical utility. Those words are all in the presentation. Other things we're aiming to do, creating some resiliency, potentially improve our infrastructure, create a source of energy that would be less reliant on Fortis. It would be owned by the people of this community, and it would generate power for the people of this community. And so all of those things still remain really relevant and important. And I think that within any revision of what it is and request to change the scope of work, I think all of those things are still key and critical to making something like this potentially still happen. What I have been thinking about is whether or not there is an opportunity to change the scope to do something else. Say, for example, replace diesel generators with grant-funded battery storage. Whether we can tie into our grid in a different way so that we are still receiving and creating a different kind of resiliency while actually reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, which we've had this conversation as well. Perhaps there are ways that battery generation and this new technology can fit into that. And I guess the question is, would changing the scope of this in a different way be worth taking that risk to ask for a change of what it is that we're doing? Or would that be too far out there, and maybe it would be very unlikely to keep that 6 million or less than 6 million if we wanted to ask for less?
Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Carlson. It's hard to say exactly what the risk would be to that 6 million, or if we were trying to keep that whole 6 million. But it was clear to us in our exploratory conversations with the funder that they are willing to entertain scope changes. If we do something significantly different of the nature that you're talking about, I suspect it'll become a major scope change and go to the management committee, take a bit more time. But they do also still have the ability to approve a major scope change. So just because something is a major scope change doesn't mean that it won't be allowed or be funded. But it would take a little bit more time. It would go to their management committee. And I think, further to Councillor Holmes' comments earlier, some back and forth and potentially even a few options that are on our mind, subject to council's consideration, would be something that we could test the waters a little bit on. At the end of the day, it is always possible that the funder could say, thanks, but no thanks. We were more interested in something at the utility scale level on solar and battery. There's risk in having the conversation, but it seemed they were willing to have a conversation. Because, I'll add, they did indicate to us that across the board they are hearing from communities who had grant awards that are now facing similar cost escalation challenges. So it's certainly not just a Summerland challenge that they're hearing it from elsewhere too.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Councillor Van Elfen and then Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And now for something totally different. If Brad's on the line, I would appreciate if he could maybe answer a few questions as close as possible. With the Eco Village, rough idea on how many buildings, houses, approximately?
Hi, Councillor Van Alven, then through the mayor. Are you asking, just to clarify, how many units we're expecting with the current footprint
Yes,
of the
please.
Village? Well, we really don't know yet what total number of units we're going to be having for the Eco Village project, because we haven't completed the design process where we want to talk about the form of density that we want to see on the Eco Village footprint area. The previous feasibility plans that we've done were just single family housing, and that's definitely what we've heard from council before, is that they're to consider a mix of housing units, and that type of information will probably be brought into our design charrette process, which we're having next week on Monday. And so to come up with perhaps more definition around how many units we can expect for the Eco Village project.
Okay, thank you. So if, for say, the solar project didn't go forward and that became additional Eco Village housing, in our design guidelines prior to a decision being made to sell the property, because we're talking about environmentally friendly homes, possibly step code 5 or what have you, all the homes we could put a criteria on there that all homes must have solar on the roofs, correct? Prior to sale.
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Alphen, yes, that's correct. And that's something that we have already instructed our consulting team to consider as part of their design process. I should say though that in responding to your remark though, it would be a little bit different type of utility than the storage and battery storage, where we wouldn't be able to do the peak shaving as an example, right? We wouldn't be operating it as a utility. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely it does. It's just, yeah, we may have to sacrifice something, but square footage wise, we still probably end up with as much or more solar panels. That would be putting power back into our grid on a daily basis. That's kind of where I was going with this, but I appreciate your time and your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too want to agree with my colleagues that I cannot move forward with option 1 or 2. I think that what we're going to be asking of our citizens in the next year in regards to our rec center, in regards to Giants Head Road that's coming up on today's agendas, that we're already diving deep into all of our pockets as we move forward, and to do another $3.5–4 million is I just can't move forward with it. But on another hand, is there any possibility that when we do go back to the funders, and this is going to kind of segue onto what Councillor Van Elfen was saying, is could we not talk to our funders about the $6 million, and perhaps with the Eco Village, that we look at some sort of using that funding as a municipal grant, where through the developer builder of that property, upon doing solar panels on those residential properties, would get a municipal grant for moving forward with those. That way we could utilize the $6 million. It's going towards solar, and we're doing it in a little bit different aspect. That way we might still be, we still may be able to meet those guidelines, but also ensure that I realize that through a builder scheme or some other medium that we will be looking at moving forward with in regards to the eco-built village, as far as whatever step code we come up with is for the builds. That but I think that a municipal grant would really help in moving that forward if our grant persons were so likely or so inclined to work with us in regards to that. Thank you.
Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a novel concept, and certainly we can test any of these with the funder. That's an innovative one. The one trick with testing the concept with the funder in terms of their elbow room to move will be what was in their original vetting. So, for example, if in whatever year it was, 2017, 2018, when the funder made their assessment to award this project, maybe another municipality had something like a municipal grant idea that was turned down. So then they would probably have some hesitancy. We just don't know what we don't know. So if option 3 is pursued in terms of a scoping change, I think, that what we might be able to do if that was pursued is to sort of come up with a few different ideas based on what we hear today, come back to council, test a few things, narrow the scope, and then test those things with the funder to see what's in the realm of the possible. That might be how an option 3 ends up unfolding if that option is pursued. But we could kind of create some menu of opportunity, for lack of a better term. The council could help us narrow down some consideration. But that's an interesting one, and thank you, Councillor, for that.
Councillor Barkwell and then Councillor Traynor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If council will remember, I think it was back in June 2020, we discussing the location of the solar project. Our CEO at the time, Anthony Haddad, said it was definitely, in response to Councillor Patton's questions, it was fair to say that if this project was located somewhere else, that the revenues and income to the district would go up, would be higher. And paraphrasing, I don't exactly remember the quote. And that didn't seem to have any weight at the time, but now considering, and I'll also point out that even with a $6 million grant in the original budget, the way it looked to me, with all the costs of the district share and the value of that land, it still didn't make economic sense. And now you consider that the increased need, the overwhelming need for the sort of housing in Summerland that people can afford, the lower market, you might say, the townhouses and the duplexes and such. Oh, I mean, we have lots of growth, $1 million homes at Hunter Hills, $1 million homes down at the Oasis and down at Landry Crescent. But I think we all recognize that there's a need in the market for the townhouse duplex range of housing, and that we could put in this location. So to me, that makes a strong argument. If we're going to go back to the funder about changing the scope of the project to also include the possibility of putting this somewhere else, such as on the landfill cell site that has to be closed up anyway. I know there's talks about the ground shifting on a landfill or something, but that doesn't seem like it could really make that much a difference. It'd have to move a heck of a lot to really impact the production of the solar power and the or the water treatment water site. Those, it seems like a lot of alternative things are being suggested, and I really like the idea of the solar panels on the roofs, but that covers all grounds. So, but maybe a relocation if rooftop solar panels can't be funded.
Jeremy or Graham?
Well, maybe I'll start in. Jeremy might have a thought. Certainly, yeah, in the call we had with the funder, they actually raised in an unsolicited way that if we change location, it will be considered a major scope change. But I think Councillor Barkwill's comments, Madam Mayor, do, presume that we're going for a major scope change potentially. And so if we change other scope, maybe we revisit location. The one thing I think I recall, though, was before my time, but seeing in the file, I think dust on the solar panels near the landfill might have been an issue. So I'm looking at our Director of Utilities here. It maybe eroded some of the capacity if we set up a utility scale sort of array there by the landfill. But I hadn't heard of the idea of water treatment plant location before. But certainly if it was council's direction to change the location, now would be the time to put all those things together into a different format for testing with the funder. But we definitely needed that direction since our presumption thus far has been the location at the toe of Cartwright Mountain. Jeremy, anything to add there?
Yeah, thank you. I can expand on that a bit through the mayor. So just taking them one at a time here. So the landfill site, we did estimate that there'd be a higher O&M cost year by year because of the dust removal. So that's an O&M cost associated with that particular site. Now, I believe it wasn't the water plant area, it was the wastewater plant. That was one of the options. Is that just for clarity there?
Water treatment facility up by the landfill. It's got a road, it's got three-phase power, it's got fire protection,
Okay.
it's got security.
Yeah, thank you. So that's one and the same, the landfill water treatment plant area. So that's the dusty area. And then the solar panels on the roofs. A few things come to mind for consideration on that. One is we need to do some technical feasibility around that. So what would that look like? When are those homes being built? What are the timelines on that? So that would all have to be kind of added into the grant funders' reapplication for their review. Might be difficult to determine some of those numbers. Metering would be interesting. Typically, your solar panel installation on your single family dwelling is offsetting your electrical usage first in that particular building, and then anything extra is being put onto the grid. So how would we measure that? So how would we prove that the system is providing us what it needs to provide? Maybe there's a special metering. So there's some technical details around that. Specifically, the timelines is a bit of a concern with that one because we don't own the buildings. So there are some challenges associated with it.
Okay, I have Councillor Traynor, and then I'm taking a turn, and then I have Councillor Carlson, Holmes, and Patton.
So I just have a question. I don't even know if this would work or not, but would there be a possibility to do, I guess, little pocket solar farms around the district of Summerland? So having panels on top of the rec center and then maybe a couple other places. So instead of having one big project, have a couple spaced around the town with battery storage attached to those.
Thank you for the question. Through the mayor, we did talk about that a couple of years ago when we were discussing site location, et cetera. We had a whole bunch of options of some of the smaller sites. Maybe we could mix them together and come up with maybe 5 locations or something where we split the solar site up on a technical basis. Absolutely doable. We do lose some efficiencies, some cost efficiencies there because having everything in one spot allows for one transformer, one or multiple big inverters that are all kind of tied together, all the wirings, shorter lengths, et cetera, et cetera. So you do get more bang for your buck having it all in one location. Splitting it up just means more inverters, more cost per installed kilowatt. But it was an option at the time and is still an option.
That possibility, that would be, I guess this question's for Graham, that would be considered a major change?
Thank you, Madam
because it's
Mayor.
location?
I think it's right to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, based on location changing, since that was listed by the funder to us as being something that would be sort of a trigger in their world for falling into a major category, I suspect it would be considered a major change. But again, we don't actually know until that's evaluated by the management committee where they would fall on that. And certainly it something that, you know, should council wish for us to check with them, we could put it in the list of things that we could explore.
My two questions are, thank you for that answer. My two questions are, what other opportunities we have to look for funding partners. I do remember, this is way back when there was interest. I can't remember if it was just after the funding was announced or when our application went forward. And there was interest from the National Energy Board in partnering with the district on this project. Is that possibly another funder that could be approached?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I recall this coming up. There was, I think, a desire on their part to test, is it NRC, to test liquid salt batteries or something of a new technology at that time. So I don't know if Jeremy remembers about that one in particular. We can continue to pursue partnerships or other grant avenues. It does add time. And so in terms of the overall grant, that itself does have a time limitation given gas tax, where if we would have to pick something, and so we might do a brief test with other partners, but would have to come to decision fairly quickly after that. I will say that on Friday, the Community Energy Association reached out to me and said they have some ideas about possibilities of additional funding for said project. Haven't had a chance to sort of get down to the bottom of what they have on their mind. But it did seem to me to be an indicator that there are partners out there that perhaps we could tap into further in whatever the project looks like going forward. I just emphasize we'd want to do that within a quick time constraint and then make some decisions given the clock keeps ticking with the funder as well.
Okay, thank you. That was that question. And then I just wanted to confirm with Jeremy. My understanding of the peak shaving, the benefits of peak shaving, is that it is a benefit for the entire community as opposed to solar panels on the roof of homes that's of benefit to that particular household. Is that an accurate understanding?
That's, in the short answer is yes, Madam Mayor. It's a community-wide benefit. Comes right off of our wholesale cost.
Right.
Yeah, peak shaving does.
Okay, so another important thing that we can't forget, right, Councillor Carlson? Yeah. Okay. So Councillor Carlson, you're next, and then Holmes, and then Patton.
Thank you. I have two things. One is maybe a question for utilities. What can you replace a diesel generator with? Is there something in the works or something in the future? How are we going to get rid of that source of fossil fuel? Do you have any idea?
Thank you, Councillor Carlson, through the mayor. Yeah, that's a big question. Right now, I would say, for instance, if you look at Merit or some of the problems that are happening around our community, they would probably have some issues if their facilities were backup powered by a lithium-ion battery or some other battery technology. They'll likely run out in a short period of time. Diesel provides that very stable fuel under emergencies that you can run for as long as you have a source of fuel. You can continue to run it, and so it stores well. It's got a lot of energy in it. So for emergency situations, it works really well. So it would be a matter of operationally, how would we want to tackle that? There's some other possibilities, but they're all sort of fringe technologies that aren't well established yet. Maybe like hydrogen or something like that would be a possibility, but something that maybe Summerland would end up being sort of a test subject on. Diesel is sort of industry standard for that emergency backup. Yep.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And my other one is, I think it's more a question for council to think about, because if we determine that, and I don't know if we're determining this, that maybe this is a future conversation, but if the solar and battery project doesn't go at the toe of Cartwright, then should we not be having a public community conversation about what should be going there? And not just assume that it's going to be houses?
Okay, thank you. Good question. Councillor Holmes.
Yes, thank you. So if we're looking at a scaled down project, then it does make some sense that maybe if it's a smaller project, it could go into a different, you could go somewhere else, and it's worth looking at different locations. But I don't want us to lose sight of what I have always seen as the biggest opportunity here, and that's for peak shaving. And you know, I understand people are worried about the cost of the project, but and nobody really seems to be too concerned about their electricity costs. But I think we need to start thinking that we need to stabilize our electricity prices. And so my question is, could we get from would staff be able to provide us what a scaled down, how scaled down can we go on a project and still achieve the benefits of peak shaving?
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Through the mayor, we can peak shave to any extent and see a benefit from that. So right now, the plan for the project is the original vision for the project is that we'd have at least 1 megawatt. So that can come down to 100 kilowatts if we wanted. There's still a benefit there. The economic benefit is less, but it still provides, still shaves some amount of peak. So under a major change with the funder, we would likely have to do another economic analysis and provide that to them. So that'd be part of that.
Graham?
Yeah, just on the element of peak shaving, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through to Councillor Holmes. Another option, I mean, if we're kind of going back to revisiting some of the key principles or structure of the original vision, a battery-only project is something else that could be considered. We really could put batteries anywhere in the district near our electrical grid, use those batteries to shave, and we don't actually need the solar production or indeed, you know, possibility in some of these other ideas. The only other thing I was going to mention just on the diesel generator, I think in the energy strategy too, Jeremy, if you remind me, I think maybe natural gas, well, it's still a fossil fuel sort of source with emissions with combustion, but is it better than diesel in terms of its emissions, and was something that had been considered. But just further to Councillor Carlson's comments, in terms of something that is peak shaving, something totally different, and if that's a priority, battery only project might be an option that council could consider as well. And just throwing it out there.
Okay. Good with that for now, Councillor Holmes? Okay, thank you. Councillor Patton, followed by Councillor Traynor, and then Councillor Barcon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The current project that we were looking at would power approximately 100 homes. I'm going back into my memory here a little bit.
Thank you, Councillor Patton. Through the mayor, yes, we've been advertising that as that figure. And just keep in mind that that would be 100 homes based on full consumption over a full year, et cetera. So you add up all of that consumption for 100 homes and add up all of the generation produced by the solar system, just the solar system, and that would equal roughly 100 homes.
Thank you. If I may. As Councillor Carlson so eloquently put out, that perhaps where the site isn't going to be in regards to residential properties, but we're already moving forward as far as the eco-village goes. So if we were looking at solar panels on a minimum of 100 units up at that site, And there was an excess where it was netted back to the district, and we were to look at CAO stats in regards to battery storage, would we not be able to come out with the same benefit of being able to, we have 100 houses that aren't on grid. There is a net use that is coming back to the district, and we are taking a portion of that net use and putting them back into batteries in regards to peak shaving. So we're kind of achieving our goal, but maybe we're taking a long, windy road instead of a straight and narrow path. Am I along the?
Thanks, Councillor Patton. Through the mayor, technically it's feasible. I believe the square footage required for solar panels to offset one standard 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom residential home is pretty significant. It's like an acre of panels, or just like it's more than the typical roof surface. And so that would have to be a consideration. We'd have to look at, you know, as many factors as we can to figure out what would, maybe it would be something along the lines of 200 homes would need solar panels, and that would offset 100 homes, something like that. But the idea is potentially workable. Might not look exactly like that. Here's 100 homes with with solar panels for 100 homes, but yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yes, I agree. I was just saying 100 homes, eco-village. It would be based on whatever the square footage of the roof was. And if we're talking multifamily, as Councillor Barkwell was putting out, or duplex where we have more surface area for panels, I think that, anyways, it's good conversation anyway. Thank you so much.
Councillor Traynor?
Thank you for bringing up all of those points. That was helpful. I guess my only concern with putting panels on potential houses in that area is the timeline for this grant. Like, so many pieces would have to fall into place in order for that to happen. And the eco-village, you know, may or may not happen still, and we don't know when it's going to happen. So I would just be concerned about timelines. So that was just a comment. My question is for our CAO. He mentioned batteries. I'm just wondering, can you just elaborate a little bit more on that? How would that look? And where exactly would the batteries draw power from? Would that be from current panels that we have around the district? Can you just explain a bit more about how that might look?
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor, Councillor Traynor, my comments just draw on Councillor Holmes mentioning that peak shaving is a very important part, and because of that, you know, that peak is being shaved by the storage in those batteries. But batteries don't have to be charged by solar panels. We can also charge batteries off of the electricity in the grid that we buy wholesale, and we are, as an electric utility, we purchase power, and the price of that power changes depending on the demand. And so we could, you know, have a battery only project, even hypothetically, where we're charging those batteries when price of power is lower, and then we're releasing the power that is in the batteries at the peak. So just entirely from the grid itself, and benefiting from the changes in the pricing that we pay as an electric utility in the uniqueness that we have an electric utility. But I am looking also to our director of utilities to check my homework on that, just to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Thank you. The only thing I would clarify there is that our price doesn't actually change through the day, but that peak shaving reduces our demand charge through the day, through the month, and through the year. Yep.
Councillor Patton, I think I missed you. No, I did go to you. Before I go to you, Barkwell, pardon me, my goodness. Councillor Barkwell, can you give me 15 seconds to finish writing my notes? Thank you. I don't want to miss a word of what you have to say. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kind of just to share my thoughts here. I'm not really sure why there is a concern over diesel generators when they're run half an hour a month just to make sure that they're running well. If we're going to be putting resources into, reducing carbon emissions, maybe we should be like towards more electric vehicles or retrofitting houses, or not houses, but district buildings to make them more energy efficient, the pools, the arenas, and things like that. And I do agree 100%, 110% with battery storage being the priority for quite a few reasons. One is that the BC Hydro has recently completed their review of our electrical demand and capacity, and little has changed. We really have a surplus in BC of power until about 2030. There's articles in your favorite environmental magazines about why these run-of-river projects are not having their contracts renewed. I mean, if there's going to be additional power produced, it certainly should be something like an existing run-of-river project, but they're not being renewed by the government because the government says, no, we're not going to buy your power, we've got lots. So solar power would just be adding to a surplus and seeing more water spill over dams and wasted from existing resources. So battery and peak shaving is certainly the priority. And I think maybe CEO Stat might recall a conversation I had with him about battery storage, which came up early in this project, where it was suggested that there was I told him about it because I don't think you were here yet. This was a National Research Council was interested because it had new technology, and Councillor Holmes made the comment at the time he didn't like that idea because it was risky and he didn't want to run the risk of failure. But if we can get this entirely through a grant funding and concentrate on battery storage and be doing something innovative, I agreed with him at the time, but if we can be seen to be contributing towards innovation with this grant money in Summerland, I think it's a win all around, and just concentrate on the batteries. But, like you say, that's a major change, but they might see, it might be more attractive to them if they see that we're also, introducing innovation, which solar panels and lithium-ion batteries is not innovation. I mean, there's billions of dollars worth of solar panels being put in now, so we're not learning anything there. So, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad you let me have time to write, because I totally agree with what you just said, and it reminded me, thank you, Councillor Van Elfen, and it reminded me of one of the comments that we got back when we first talked to the provincial government about this, and that was, because you have battery storage, it makes quite a unique and innovative project. So that was a key piece in us getting the funding, if I recall correctly. So good point, Councillor Barkwell. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to kind of go off of what Councillor Trainer was saying earlier, and I really like the concept of battery storage at critical infrastructure areas in our community, like Public Works, City Hall, Arena, or, like I think our Arena is our emergency response center. So battery storage is in those locations. If it's being augmented by solar that's existing today, or solar that, we may be putting on those buildings in the future, it's just a benefit. Because if I'm not mistaken, through to our Director of Utilities, if the solar array storage facility, battery storage was up at the Toa Cartwright, the infrastructure cost to get that battery power to strategic buildings, there's a cost to that. So if we had the battery storage at those facilities, we would eliminate that cost. So, I agree with Councillor Trainer. I think it's definitely something to pursue thought-wise, because we have a generator at Public Works, we have a generator at City Hall, I think we have a generator at the arena for emergency purposes. And if we had the battery storage there, like our director was saying, if it was a Merritt situation or a Princeton situation, I think we'd still have to use our diesel backup, but meanwhile, we would have the batteries there also. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Barkwell?
Perhaps the location of the batteries doesn't matter that much, but I really don't see the value as backup, because the preliminary primary engineering report said that they would give about 2 hours worth of power, and the capacity in the original report. And of course, you need much longer. But the other part of it is that they're going to be discharged during peak usage times. And what if you get your power outage sometime near a peak outage? So as attractive as it sounds on the surface, I don't think it really holds up when you dive into it. Yeah.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes, thank you. I just have a question regarding the grant application process. So I totally understand we're in special times right now, and with the challenges of the supply chain and everything like that. But even before COVID, every major capital project that had any kind of long implementation plan that we received grant funding for, the grant never covers what it's supposed to cover. It's every time it's up to us to cover the shortfall. I mean, that was with the Garnet Valley Road water separation, with the Arts Center, every project we do, and I don't think it's unique to Summerland, it's everywhere. And so my question is, can't we build into our grant application, the right to be able to scale depending on cost, to accommodate changing market conditions and new technologies, innovation, whatever? Can't that be built? Can't we have that kind of rolling wave approach in our grant agreement with the government, or do they just not accept that sort of thing? I don't really know how the application works. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes, through the mayor. And presumably you're talking about for this next, if we go on an option 3 basis. It's an interesting question you raised, because in the process, I went back through all the materials on the file, looking for the silver bullet, trying to find the way forward in terms of this shortfall. And there's, in our original grant application to the funder, question 10 of that, their application that we're filling the fields out in said, what will you do if you encounter cost pressures and cost overrun situation? And our response in question 10, when we went for that grant, was we will scale back the project in order to accommodate. This is great. So we got on the phone with the funder and they said, yeah, thanks for your answer in the application, but it's still subject to the grant agreement. And the grant agreement in section 4.1B, I believe it is, says that it's subject to the funder's approval through their management committee. So although they envisioned a potential problem, we envisioned a potential solution, it's still subject to the grant committee. But I think what we can do if we're in an option 3 scenario is reiterate, underscore, highlight, and identify that it would be our intent to remain agile, given we're riding the wave of a significant change in the marketplace due to all the conditions that we're seeing.
Follow up, if I may. Is there any room to negotiate the terms of the agreement? Not the application, but the actual agreement, so that something like that can be built into the agreement? Or do they just say, here's the agreement, sign?
So in truth, and to be frank, my interaction with the senior levels of government thus far, negotiation is not the feeling I'm left with that we're having with those governments. They do have defined criteria. I would look to our director of finance if there's been examples in the past where we built in provisioning, but typically it's a template agreement. The challenge being often the template being changed requires review from government lawyers and ultimately sometimes the minister in terms of the nature of that agreement. Could we ask? Absolutely. But they do like to confine us to the template agreements. Thus far, it hasn't been really much of a negotiation, but they have demonstrated a willingness to collaborate to see if we can find a way forward if we choose to try and rescope it.
Another one?
Yeah, well,
Yep,
I feel a UBCM resolution in there somewhere. But unless there's other questions, I would be happy to bring forward a resolution.
And are there other questions? Graham?
Thank you. I did have one, and I've been trying to find the right time to ask it. It's kind of a question of clarity for Councillor Van Elfen, actually, Madam Mayor. Early in the conversation, Councillor Van Elfen raised the question of solar panels on the roofs, potentially of what might end up being an eco-village. No decisions have been made yet. Just from my clarity, and a light went on when I heard our Director of Development Services talking about typically solar panel on the roofs for the individual and offsetting their own power costs. Is your proposal, Councillor Van Elfen, that the district would own the panels and the condition would be that our panels can go on the roofs of their houses? Or is it just more of people putting from a step code perspective, the panels on their roofs for their own use and enjoyment?
Thank you for the question. No, it was more of a, if the grant funding, we scrap this whole concept and pull the plug on the solar project, so to speak, that theoretically we could still have the same amount of solar panels in the district of Summerland. Yes, they would be privately owned, but yes, they're putting their excess back into the grid. If we're looking at being green and trying to be, keeping climate change at the forefront, but because it's a new development, we own the land, we can set the criteria, we can set the build scheme. And no, we wouldn't own the panels, the homeowners would.
That might be something for consideration, though.
It's just another environmentally friendly project that's going to be added to the cost of the homes. Now, that's, how we determine how these homes are going to look like. Is there going to be a mix of townhouses, fourplexes, single-family residences, what have you? But again, when we do a project like that, if the solar doesn't go there and the battery storage doesn't go there, like Councillor Barco said earlier, we're in desperate need of housing in this community and a variety of housing, a diversity of housing. And I just think it's an opportunity, but solar on the roof is just another benefit to our whole community, I think. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
I have another question of Jeremy related to this. You mentioned that it would require an acre worth of panels on top of roofs to get to, I can't remember, 1 megawatt? Is that what you said? No. Could you clarify, please?
The point I was trying to make earlier, Madam Mayor, is that we couldn't necessarily take, because we were advertising that we're going to be generating power equivalent to the usage of 100 homes. We couldn't take 100 homes and put solar panels on the roofs of 100 homes and have the equivalent system, because there's likely not enough square footage on a typical roof for that. We'd need maybe 200 homes or some number. I don't know the number. We'd have to study that. And then there's losses associated with it, more losses because there's more inverters, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, 100 homes does not necessarily equal the solar project we have currently on the books.
Thank you for that. Councillor Trainer and then Councillor Barkwell.
I have a feeling we may be moving towards option 3, but I'm not sure. And so with that in mind, I'm just wondering through our CAO, what exactly would that look like if we were to go back to the funders with some alternative plans? Like how many options would we bring back to them? Would those options come to council first and then we pick one and then you guys go back? Like what would that look like? Because we've discussed a couple ideas today, like batteries or a scale back project, possibly little pocket solar farms. So would you present those all to them or would you come back to us first?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through to Councillor Trainer. In my mind, I think what we would do in an option 3 scenario today, should their council direct us in that way, would be to create what I call a menu of opportunities. So there's a number of ideas that have been listed today. And we might have a couple too, if in an option 3 scenario. We'd test that back with council quickly, just based on our own, kind of what should stick. And then ideally would get to a more narrow list and then be able to work with the owner's engineer potentially to help us refine some calcs on whatever questions council has or desire that is to certain things that we wish to achieve with those. And then would engage into this discussion with the funder, hopefully with some back and forth opportunity with them. The other alternative, of course, is if council has a clear option or few clear options that they just want to direct us to work on right now, we could certainly shorten that timeline a little bit. But I would imagine we could put something together in a couple of weeks in terms of this menu of opportunity that would just be the testing document if council wants us to go back and rethink some of this.
So by our meeting in December, is that what you're thinking?
I'm looking at Jeremy here. I think from an ideas perspective, we could probably jot down the ideas and some bullet points under those and some questions by that next meeting, I think, Jeremy. Is that feasible? He'd be doing the heavy lifting on this, so.
Yeah, I think that's possible.
Okay, good question. Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question for maybe Jeremy has an answer. And down south, a lot of places, they have solar panels over the parking lots. And is that feasible in northern climes where we have snow? Have you seen that done anywhere? Is it within the realm? I'd hate to be the first.
Thank you, Councillor, through the Mayor. I have seen it in Canada. I think they can be designed to handle snow load. I mean, they're on roofs of homes, so where there's snow load there. So I think it is doable. Mm-hmm.
Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just further to that, in southwestern Ontario, they have lots that are just on a freestanding pole that are GPS controlled. They just go back to the east, follow the sun, go to the west, go back to the east at night. And they're on one single pole and they take up a huge array and no land. All it is one pole in the ground. So, I mean, there's all sorts of different options where we don't have to utilize valuable, precious land.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I would just note, Madam Mayor, that the more complicated the racking system, the more expensive it is per kilowatt.
Does operation and maintenance costs go up as well? Yeah, and that's reflected in the cost per kilowatt.
That's correct, Madam Mayor. Their capital cost goes up, but also to maintain those motors and gearing system, et cetera, you would have a higher O&M cost there.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, back to you, Councillor Holmes.
So I'll bring forward a motion that council directs staff to proceed with option 3 as outlined in the report from the Director of Utilities dated November 22nd, 2021.
Seconded by Councillor Trainer. Okay, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. I just want to say that I still believe that the solar and battery project in its location on Cartwright Mountain is a good idea. And it's unfortunate that it has come to a point where the budget is so high and so so COVID that it doesn't seem like it would be at all fair to try and impose that on the people when we do have a lot of other projects that we need to do, and we need to find ways to keep funding those things. And so I do hope that we can retain the $6 million and that we can do something that's going to improve the district-owned electrical utility and is going to create some resilience. And hopefully we can find a way to do some peak shaving and to encourage local citizens to participate in solar on their roofs and to continue to do things that are going to make it so that we can own this utility and it is a profitable venture for the people of Summerland, because it's a really neat asset to have. I don't know if I'm allowed to use that word, but I do think our electrical utility needs our attention, and this project was in its imagined form was going to do that. And so I hope that we can find another way to do that, and that the people who don't see the value in this project will find some value in it in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. I have a question about option 3. That will include the reduced scope, right? That's one of the menu items? Okay, thank you. Further discussion on this? Everyone's discussed out? I'll call the, Councillor Van Elfen.
But so reduced scope is basically reduced battery storage going back into the grid, correct, Jeremy?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the mayor, reduced scope can be a number of things. So we can reduce battery, we can reduce solar, we can reduce both. So that'll be the plate of options that we bring forward.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so that carries unanimously. And it's time for a break. Let's resume at 3:30. Let's resume. We'll resume at 3:30, recognizing that we'll probably have to extend this meeting a bit. Good? 3:30 exactly, and we'll get on to 7.4 Giants Head Road upgrades and project options. This is for Joe, I believe. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report is before council today for direction on moving forward with the Giants Head Road upgrades project. Council's seen most or all of this information in previous reports to council with the beautiful pictures that go with them as well. The design has not changed, and the updated budget costs haven't had much significant change. They've actually gone down more than they've gone up, just with the detailed design being completed. And in following with council's previous direction on this project, staff have applied for grants as appropriate for this project. However, we have not yet been successful. The report before you outlines some potential options for moving this project forward in the absence of grant funding. So just a quick background on the project, just to refresh everybody's mind. There are really three main objectives. First, the project would be a road upgrade to Giants Head Road from Harris Road to Hilborn Street. This would include road reconstruction to a collector road standard, as well as several storm-related improvements identified in the district's master drainage plan. The second objective is to enhance the district's cycling master plan by extending the separated pathway, which currently ends at Harris Road, right through to Gartrell Road. And then beyond Gartrell Road, it would be essentially like a shared pathway, a shoulder bikeway, all the way to Hilborn. Finally, the project would include upgrades to 2 aging water mains within the road corridor. Replacement of the 2 water mains would reduce main leaks along this corridor, as well as eliminate the need to replace the mains at a future date, meaning digging up the road that's just been paved. This project would help the district in achieving system separation along Giants Head Road, in turn reducing the demand on the district water treatment plant. The capacity of our treatment plant is 75 megaliters per day, with summer demand this year being as high as 85 to 90 megaliters per day. This project would approximately reduce this demand on the treatment plant by 5 megaliters per day. System separation for this project does require some upstream water system separation upgrades beyond the location of this project. There are 5 upstream locations that require upgrades in order for the proposed separation lines in Giants Head Road to be fully system separated. While these projects haven't been designed within the scope of this project, we have included an estimate of $2 million for the construction within the total project budget. In Table 1 of the report, there's a breakdown of the project costs, not including the upstream system separation project. That's the $2 million one I just spoke of. There are several options that council could consider at this time, including only completing the paving, water main, or active transportation components. You'll also notice that on the far right, there's an alternative option for pulverizing the existing road width. This is not recommended, as it would provide a significantly reduced lifespan for that asphalt if we proceeded that way. If council's looking to complete the works along Giants Head Road, it's recommended to complete the full project at this time, including the upstream works to provide full system separation along Giants Head Road. That would gain us that 5 megaliters for the water treatment plant. The estimate for this work would be approximately $7.7 million. That includes that $2 million estimate for the upstream improvements. Alternatively, if council wanted to reduce this budget, they could also reduce the scope to end this project at Gartrell Road. This would be accomplished for about $5.4 million, including the upstream improvements. At this time, perhaps Dave can discuss the potential funding options for this project, our Director of Finance.
Thanks, Joe. So looking at these projects and the 2 options that have been presented by staff, there's 2 real funding options that staff have identified. The first one is postponing approved capital projects. So again, council can resolve to postpone or defer a significant portion of the capital projects within the current 5-year approved capital plan. That would free up enough reserve funding to allow this project to move forward without any other alternative funding sources. However, as noted with our last project, This is not recommended by staff, as although it may fund the reconstruction of Giants Head Road, it will leave a significant gap over about a 2 or 3 or even a 4-year period where we will have no capital funds to work on any other capital projects. The other alternative is debt financing. And the report does speak to a few different options from a debt financing perspective. However, as noted previously, if council was to move forward with a debt finance project, an alternative approval process or a referendum would be required prior to this project moving forward. Thank you.
Is it back to you, Joe, or is that the end of the staff presentation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's the end of the staff presentation. The only thing I just wanted to note was the recommendation that council directs staff to initiate the process of debt financing for option A as outlined in this report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. Question through to our Director of Finance. How much longer debt-wise for Garnet Valley Road?
Through the chair, I'm just trying to think. I think that one's finished. That was a 5-year short-term borrowing, so that one would be completed.
Thank you.
Councillor Holmes and Councillor Carlson.
Yes, thanks. I'd kind of like to be able to see a map to visualize some of this, but so you mentioned there were 2 water mains, and so where what are the 2 different water mains? Where does one stop and start? And were both those water mains installed at the same time? Are they both the same age, or are they one newer than the other?
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Through the mayor, there are existing 2 water mains within the entirety of this project. One's more for irrigation and one's for domestic. They're different eras, but they're both nearing end of life for the project. So this project would be the installation of 2 replacement mains, leaving the existing ones in place, just abandoning them. So the project goes from Harris Street on Giants Head Road all the way through till either Gartrell or to Hillborn Road.
So, sorry, I'm a bit confused. So there's 2 existing mains right now. They run parallel to each other? They do?
Yes, they do. So it's just a replacement project of both of those mains.
Are both used right now? Yeah?
Yes, they are. But they're both with treated water.
Oh, okay.
So that separation piece wasn't ever completed?
No, it wasn't completed.
Okay. Councillor Carlson.
Just, I think it's a question for Director of Finance. The borrowing options, there's no option here for a 5-year borrow because it's not recommended to borrow millions and millions of dollars on a 5-year term because it then handcuffs council in borrowing money for other projects. Is that something I might put out there and ask?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Carlson, just based on the size of the borrowing, a 5-year option wasn't even looked at. Just from an annual debt payment perspective, our annual debt payments on a 20-year borrowing are $356,000. So I think on a 5-year, I would need to run the numbers, but they would probably be 2, 3, 4 times the size, which to pay for that would require a very large increase in rates.
Thank you. So my understanding is that if Garnet Valley is paid off after 5-year large payments, we don't necessarily want to get into that situation again. But there could potentially be another option here, which is to have this ready to go and continue to apply for grants, correct?
Through the chair, yes. My understanding, and Joe can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the drawings are all ready to go, and it's just a matter of waiting for those grants to come forward and have the district apply and hopefully become successful.
And just to follow up, if you don't mind. So would it be possible to have a referendum on borrowing, but also receive a grant and then not have to borrow as much of that money?
Yes.
Councillor Trainer and then Councillor Van Elfen.
I'm just wondering, how many times did we apply for a grant for this project? Is it two times at least, or three? Do we know?
Thank you, Councillor, through the mayor. My understanding is we've applied for this project or this grant once in 2017.
Oh,
We apply whenever there's an eligibility, and there's not very many grants that this would be eligible for. So.
Okay, I thought we had done it twice. Okay, and then my second question is the active transportation portion, the bike path. Is there an opportunity to apply for a grant for that portion?
Yes, through the mayor. There are active transportation grants that are commonly brought up, and we would apply for any grants that we could for that path.
Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Back to what Councillor Holmes is saying. Is there any possibility we could bring Google Maps up on the screen so we can see the difference between the Hillborn and the Gartrell Road?
We'll look into that right now and see if we can do that. Thanks, Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you so much.
In the meantime, I have a couple of questions. I note that the options that show for the debt borrowing, the estimated interest rate is 2.5%. Is that low because it's through the MFA?
Through Madam Mayor, yes. Currently, MFA's 10-year borrowing rate is 2.43%. So on an initial borrowing, we would borrow at that 10-year rate. After 10 years, of course, it goes to refinancing, and where that rate will be in 10 years, I have zero clue.
That's fair enough. And then I have a question for Joe as well. You mentioned the 5 megaliters per day. Is that significant?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. It is significant in the capacity of our facility is only 75 megaliters per day, and we're currently in our peak period demand. We're in the 85 to 90 megaliter per day range. So dropping off 5 megaliters would be over 5% capacity gained by the water treatment plant.
Yeah, that would be great. And also it's better for agriculture too to have that water separated. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. So I was just wondering, do we have any kind of a water system separation plan? I know in the water master plan, it looks at water separation at kind of a high level, and Giants Head Road is next on the list of things to be separated. But it doesn't really go into detail about about the whole, looking at the whole twinning as one big picture. And I've always thought, if we had a separate separation plan and looked at it as one project, we might be more successful with grant funding if that's the project we're phasing in over time and applying for, as opposed to repaving a road. So that's one question. And the second question is for the upstream works for this project. I'd like to see on the map where those 5 locations are, and also just I'd like to be able to visualize on the map where it's twinned now and how the twinning would come around and onto Giants Head Road, and how all that would work.
If I may just, Greg, I just sent you an email with a presentation attached to it. And it does actually show a lot of these items. It's just a historical one that we can use. It's one that council has seen before, and it may help to show the area as well as some of the questions that have just come up. So I'm not sure if that's easy to bring up.
And then Councillor Van Elfen, you can determine whether or not you've got what you need. Okay.
To you.
Graham, did you want to say something?
Well, maybe just because we have a moment in time here, I was just going to make a comment, Madam Mayor, about your question on the 5 megaliters. It doesn't sound like a lot, but this summer during the heat dome, when our water treatment facility was operating at above capacity, I would have given just about anything to have 5 megaliters because pumps were breaking down, things were overheating, the demand was high, and we almost had to switch to the bypass, which puts the whole community on either a water advisory or boil water order, and takes a long time to come off of that because of the testing requirements that need to. So that 5 megaliters, as Joe was saying, in those times of high need, is extremely significant. And so the water twinning in this project, I think, is a broad community value that could help our overall sort of resilience if we continue to see these sort of heat events.
Thank you. That's exactly why I asked the question. I was hoping that I would hear the answer. Yes, it's significant. Councillor Carlson.
I was just wondering if our Director of Finance might be able to tell us what is our borrowing ability. You know, can we borrow $7.5 million for this and another 35 for if we go to a referendum and have to borrow that much money for another project? Are we actually capable of doing that? You don't need to answer it right now if you don't have that information, but maybe we can find that out.
Thank you. Through Madam Mayor, I'm just pulling up our budget presentation, our debt presentation from last January, which will give me some answers. But I guess in short, if council will recall, during that presentation, we threw out, I think, 5 different examples on projects that we had coming forward. The Health and Wellness Center with the Rec Center, Giants Head Road, Eisentalk Dam, and voltage conversion. I think between all of those different projects, there was close to $100 million in borrowing. And there was sufficient capacity to borrow on those projects. So the one thing with the way borrowing is, when we borrow money, our limits are dictated by 25% of our overall revenues. So if we borrow money and then we increase rates to pay for that debt, we're actually at the same place because we've now just increased our revenue again. So from a borrowing perspective, yes, we're okay. It then comes down to the amount that we're borrowing and the amount that's being put back onto the residents in regards to rates or property taxes.
Thank you. And just to also confirm, we haven't borrowed any money since we did Garnet Valley Road, correct? This council hasn't made any decisions to borrow large sums of money because we knew that there are these projects coming up and we've been trying to build some reserves to get these done.
That is correct.
Okay, so the slides are there, and you know what Councillor Holmes's question was?
Yes, thank you, Madam
Okay.
Mayor. There were several questions, but one of the ones that has been the common theme is just where exactly these are. So I've just put up an overview. It's, I guess, a little bit difficult to see, but this one shows the extents of the full project in that yellow line there. So on the right-hand side of that line would be Harris Road, would be the start. And you just follow that along, and then you go sort of left along Giants Head Road until you come to Gartrell. And that's where the separation would be from the separated transportation route to just sort of a shared bike lane with the vehicles from there to Hillborn. And I'll just go a couple of slides ahead. And now one of the questions was, is it one pipe or is it two pipes? So what you'll see here, this is just a section of the road. This is part of the detailed design drawings. So the blue lines are the existing water mains that we have in the ground. And the red lines are the new water mains that will be replacing those blue ones. So the blue ones will just be abandoned in place. They're aged, I have the actual years of those water mains. One's from 1938 and one's from 1977. The 1977 one is an AC asbestos concrete pipe that does show significant wear. So we would be replacing those with a plastic pipe that will last significantly longer, and we will have very few leaks with that. So these are the on-site projects that were referred to. The ones that are off-site, there's several of them throughout town. The projects start at the water treatment plant. Right out of the water treatment plant, there's a section that we would have to upgrade for this project for system separation. And then some of the other projects are along Prairie Valley Road in a variety of areas where basically we would just have to be reconnecting some pipes, as well as within the roundabouts, there's some work that would have to be done. There's 5 separate projects that would need to be identified. They're actually budgeted for the design in the coming year. Council has seen those before. And so we would proceed with the design in the hopes that it would be able to be added to this project as part of the project construction as one large project. Are there more questions on that? Okay.
So with this upstream works, would the twin system be ready to go down Giants Head Road? It wouldn't require any future work to be done. That would be the future work that's required.
Correct, through the mayor. That's the future work, the estimated $2 million, because we haven't done the detailed design yet. There's still some investigation that would need to happen.
So the twinning right now, or the water separation right now, it comes down Prairie Valley, but is the water separated all the way through the roundabouts and all the way up Giants Head right now, up to Harris Road right now?
No, the current pipes up to Harris Road aren't system separated. There are areas of town that are system separated, but for this section of town to be system separated, there are upstream works that have to be done. Those are the 5 projects that we've identified. I don't know the exact locations where all the system separations happened within the town. That was several years ago. But for this section of town to be system separated along Giants Head Road to basically acquire 5 extra megaliters from the water treatment plant capacity, we would need to do those upstream works.
Right, so once we do those upstream works, then that 5 megaliters we can start saving right from the get-go.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. So if we went, if we decided to go with option A, because the question through to our Director of Finance, how quickly can we get an answer from the public? Like, what's the most economical way to engage the public to get their consent? Is it we wait till election time for a referendum, or do we do it sooner?
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Alphen, the most time expedient way to get voter assent would be through an alternative approval process. So the way the process would work, excuse me, is once council was to make a decision, we would bring a borrowing bylaw in front of you for first 3 readings. Once those first 3 readings were read, we would have to then send the bylaw off to the ministry for their approval. And at that same time, we could be running the alternative approval process, which would require some advertising. And our corporate officer can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is if 10% of the public was to come back and say that they did not want to move forward with that borrowing, then the borrowing would be defeated, and council could then either look at going through a referendum process or changing the bylaw or looking at different avenues. But that would be the most expedient way.
Councillor Trainer.
I was wondering if we would be able to go back to that slide that showed the pipe and what the pipes look like inside. Oh, that one's taken off of Quinn Pool. So would the ones along Giant's Head likely look the same as that, given their age?
Through the mayor, it's hard to say exactly what they look like, but this is typical for pipes of this era to be pulled up, and so we reduce capacity by doing that. But obviously, there's other issues with having that build up within the pipes.
And is that affecting the quality of drinking water?
No, through the mayor, the drinking water is still of good quality.
Okay, and if we do replace these pipes, then theoretically, I guess we'd be getting better flow. And I would guess, even though you said it doesn't affect quality, I'm sure it would probably not hurt the quality if we had new pipes and water not flowing through that, because to know that we're getting our drinking water through those kind of pipes is a little bit unnerving.
Yeah, through the mayor, you'll probably note that we do flushing each year, and there's sediment that's built up, and sometimes you'll actually have some color in your water. There will be a lot less of that because there's less spots for the silt to get deposited once you remove these flow constrictions.
Anyone else have questions? I just have a question of interest, I guess. Why do you leave the water mains in place?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So there's not much value in pulling them out. As you'll see, the ones up there from 1977 are asbestos concrete, and asbestos is something that we do not want to deal with if at all possible. So instead of actually handling it again, we just leave it in place so that it can't harm anybody that's trying to pull it out of the ground. We do note it so that if we ever do future digs in that area, that is there. Usually it does have some sort of a tape across it so you can identify it before you actually strike it, but it is much safer to just leave asbestos alone.
Makes perfect sense. And one other question related to the questions that Councillor Holmes had. The upstream work that needs to be done for the water separation, all of that's included in the estimate, right?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. That estimate, it's the $2 million. So the 7.7 includes that $2 million, yes. So it's just an estimate of $2 million for those off-site upgrades that would have to happen.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holmes and then Councillor Van Elfen.
So if we went ahead with the full project, but only to Gartrell, seeing that there is a twin pipe already on the rest of Giant's Head, can you connect the new pipes to the old pipes for that Gartrell to Hillborn section?
Yes, through the mayor, we should be able to.
So I don't really see this as an option, but I was just wondering what, thinking in terms, well, you could phase in, you could do that other section later, the road part of it later. I just wondering the costs for doing Harris to Gartrell only as a full project, and then just the pulverize and pave for the Gartrell to Hillborn section. That might, you might also get some of the benefits of twinning the whole extension of that, but also buy us some time and reduce our costs.
Through the mayor, yes, that is definitely an option. This picture, I believe, shows that stretch of road. And when you pulverize asphalt, you're basically pulverizing it into the ground and it becomes your new base material. It's not an ideal base material, so its longevity would definitely be much shorter. We would see cracking within a few years likely in doing that, but it definitely is an option to do that.
Council, could I have someone bring forward a motion to extend the meeting and provide a time, please? Councillor Van Elfen.
4:30 if we could, Madam Mayor.
Okay, 4:30? All in favor? Great, thank you. Councillor Holmes, you're good? Okay. Councillor Van Elfen, and I'll just ask you to turn your mic off, Councillor Holmes.
Oh, sorry.
I was prepared to put the option A on the table, Madam Mayor, but I think there's other questions.
I'll go to Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Holmes brings up what I was thinking as well. There has to be a limit on how much we can spend. And the stretch from Gartrell to Hailborn is much less used than the rest of Giant's Head Road. And so although it's not exactly an option as specified here, I'd call it option B1 perhaps. I really like the project, the idea of going from full, what do you call, the full meal deal all the way up to the intersection there at Harris. And no, that's the other end at Gartrell, and yeah, Giant's Head and Gartrell, and the pulverize, if anything, maybe not even anything, but I'll put pulverize from there to Hailborn. Does that have any traction with anybody?
Councillor Traynor.
Can I just clarify, there was a, Joe, I think you made a comment a couple minutes ago that if we were to do that, there would be cracking likely within a couple of years in that section from Gartrell to Hailborn?
Yes, thank you, through the mayor. Yeah, when we do that pulverizing, it's not replacing the existing failed base material that's there. So I haven't, like the geotech hasn't been done to a full extent on that area, but just looking at the photos and knowing that stretch of road quite well, the base has failed in that area. And so when you're putting nice new asphalt on top of base that's failed, even though it's recompacted and they do try to freshen it up a little bit, it still is more susceptible to failure than when you put in a proper base and sub base with drainage, which is the sort of the option A.
Yeah, so I understand the need, the desire to save money, but I also really don't like the idea of doing something that's only going to, that we're just going to have to replace or that's going to crack in a couple of years.
I agree with you, Councillor Traynor. If I'm reading the table correctly, it shows 580 for the, no, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, there's 950 for the full project and then just over $1 million for that project. So I don't see a huge cost saving, but maybe I'm reading that wrong. I have a question, and maybe this is for Graham. When we had the presentation from Trails of the Okanagan 2-3 months ago, there was some discussion about the route towards the south, and was the route across, or maybe anyone remember, down Giant's Head and then across Hailborn and then continue on? Yeah. because they want to get, ultimately, they want to get off of, onto the trestle, yeah. Okay, so that was the route?
To be honest, Madam Mayor, I can't recall. I remember the coming through Garnet and I remember the trestle.
Yeah.
Intuitively, I imagine it must come through here, but I don't remember specifically.
So it
that.
crosses at Hillborn. Oh, maybe you remember, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just met with them 2 weeks ago in discussing this project, and they said it would align with their project as well.
So I think given that, I think it's important to put the effort and money into doing the road, something that will last for some time, not only for that active transportation corridor, but there's also been, we've heard a lot of concern from other cycling events about that portion of the road. Well, Giant's Head, but Hillborn as well. It's in really rough shape. And I know it's quite a rural road, but it is in really rough shape. And it would really help with Man of Steel and other biking paths through town. I'm not sure who put their hand up first, but I'll go to Councillor Van Elfen. Did you have your hand up? No. Councillor Van Elfen and then to Councillor Barkwill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could we bring that map up again? The full extent of the project map? Yeah, I'm just trying to, I can't remember the name of the road at the end of Hillborn. There's a, Garnet Valley all the way, is it Hillborn it ends?
Harris to Hillborn, yes.
Yeah, so that Hillborn, like that section that we're talking about now is a high traffic area. It's a shortcut to Giant's Head Road, basically is what it is. So it gets a ton of traffic on that road. And, I'm the last person that wants to borrow money or go into debt, but at 2.4% financing, I don't think we're going to find money a whole lot cheaper today. It's only going to get more expensive in the future. I think we all know that. So I'd like to go with the option A and do it once and do it right and get it over with. And, that's my opinion. And I just think that, like I say, I think we're kidding ourselves thinking that section of road doesn't get the traffic, because it certainly does. Because I know I use it all the time. If I'm coming, from Canyon View, I'll sneak across there onto Giant's Head, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
After you'd stopped for some ice cream, yes. I'll go to Councillor Barkwill and then we'll see if there's appetite to bring something onto the table. And Councillor Holmes.
So if I am reading this table correctly, the cost to do this section from the intersection with Gartrell and Giant's Head Road to Hillborn is 2.285 million, 2,285,000. The difference between the total and the estimate for Harris to Gartrell only? Yeah, so we're talking 2.3 million for that stretch. And well, I can't say I go out there all the time, but I didn't think it got a lot of traffic. What would 2.3 million do for, say, Main Street or Prairie Valley Road, where I know they get a lot of traffic? Just putting it out there.
Councillor Van Elfen and then Councillor.
But I don't think you're. Sorry, Matt.
Sorry, you can respond to Councillor Barkwill and then I'll go to Councillor Holmes and then Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I apologize for jumping in. I don't think we're not considering the water lines, right? Like that, it gives us twinning of the water system in that area also. Am I correct? So like, it's just not paving the road. We're going to put twin water system in there, give farmers non-treated water and give domestic treated water, which is a huge benefit for a water treatment facility. You know, so that I think we need to take that into consideration. It's not just pave it. It's the infrastructure underneath that I want to see done at the same time and get it over with, because it's going to be a huge savings in the future for our water treatment facility.
Councillor Holmes.
Yes, but it's already twinned. And so there are the old pipes there, but I think we try and make do with those old pipes for in that section for a little bit longer. And it doesn't affect the active transportation part because the bike path ends at Guard Trail. And when we're talking, to me, it's, you know, you were talking about a $2 million difference. And I think we have to look at it in the bigger picture of, yeah, what else can we do with that $2 million? Because we have other roads that we need to address. And as Councillor Barkwell said, that $2 million can go a long way to fixing some other roads in this community that need fixed. That's the way I look at it. And it's a way of just buying us some time and phasing the project. And, I think we have to ask ourselves, is Giants Head Road between Guard Trail and Hillborn a bigger priority than, say, Main Street or Jubilee? To me, it's not. And so I would prefer that option where we just pulverize between Guard Trail and Hillborn. Thanks.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. What Councillor Barkwell just said actually reminded me of when Anthony Haddad was here, and he said, "Do you want to spend $8 million improving infrastructure and making sure that your downtown is ready for infill and rebuilding and the development that we so badly want to encourage and to have downtown, or do we want to spend $8 million rebuilding Giants Head Road?" And so, we don't know what it's going to cost us to redo the downtown infrastructure and how quickly and how much we might borrow. But I do think that we're going to know soon. And I do think that it's going to be another interesting conversation. When you drive on Giants Head Road, you have two things happening and they're contradictory to each other. First of all, you have to go around potholes and get all the complaints from people who don't like driving on Giants Head Road. And then in the same breath or on the same stretch of road, you have people complaining that everyone's driving too fast on Giants Head Road. And so just another one to consider, because if you can still drive that fast, maybe it isn't as urgent as people seem to think it is.
Okay, are there any more questions of staff? Would someone like to bring forward a resolution, a motion? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That council directs staff to initiate a process of debt financing for option A as outlined in the November 22nd, 2021 Giants Head Road upgrade project options report to council from the Director of Works and Infrastructure.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Traynor. Further discussion on this? Councillor Barkwell.
I'll be voting against this, not because I don't think Giants Head Road needs to be upgraded, but because I think we should limit and go with, as Councillor Holmes said, a phased approach. And we'll get the benefit of the twinning by hooking up the water lines at that point. And we can save $2 million for other things. And the only sacrifice being that the road, which doesn't get a great deal of traffic, will eventually deteriorate to where we want to do something with it again. And maybe that's when we'll do the replacement of the lines 10 or 15 years from now.
Councillor Traynor and then Councillor Carlson.
I'm going to be voting in favor of this. This project has been on our minds for a long, long time. We've been thinking about it and talking about it. And, I understand the need to save money as well, but I really am uncomfortable with doing Band-Aid solutions, where we fix something, but it's not completely fixed. I don't like spending money on that kind of stuff. I'd rather not touch it. So I just think that we should just do this entire project. It's a good debt financing rate right now, and then it will be done, and we don't have to worry about it again. I think again, if we do it, just the surface, that section will probably never get done. It'll probably go back down to the bottom of the list, and so it's shovel ready now. And it's also part of a biking route that we're really trying to encourage cycling in our community. So that's another reason that I think that we should just do it right, and we'll ultimately see what the taxpayers think. So, but I'm in support of it.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. I think that we should have this project ready to go, and I think that we should do this project, but I think we should also try one more time to see if we might get some grant funding to make it a more affordable project for this community. The event this past summer where we had to turn, in the middle of the night, had to turn water off because there was a high flow and a lot of users on Giants Head Road were considered to be high volume water users. I think it actually might help when trying to apply for a grant, especially if we look at twinning the system and getting that, and we can use the resiliency and the climate change and the infrastructure need as part of that. And I think talking about water and water security and food security, because those things are all tied together, when applying for grants will be more, I don't think we used those things last time we applied, so I do think that it's worth trying that one more time. I'm not saying we shouldn't be paving Giants Head Road and making it better for everybody, but I do think that it would be nice if there was some more support to do that from from outside of our community. And then if we fail, then let's go through this process and find out if the community is willing to finance something like this.
Councillor Barkwell.
What Councillor Carlson said would actually be my first choice, but I never thought it would really get a lot of support. There has two people thinking along those lines, and I understand Parliament is going back into session. There'll probably be new infrastructure grant programs announced with Parliament, and for the reasons that she mentioned, the tie-in with the environment and the resiliency of our water system and everything, it's worth taking another shot. And it means a lot to our community to get a grant that might cover even 50%, although most are 66%.
Just before I go to you, Councillor Holmes, I have a question for our Director of Finance. Do these two processes, so grant application and going out for AAP or maybe referendum, are they exclusive of each other? You have to choose one or the other? Or could we, I'll let you answer the question, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. They're not necessarily inclusive of each other. Council could make a resolution to move forward with borrowing on this project, and it would not hinder us from going through that alternative approval process. The way we would word the bylaw is that council borrow up to a certain amount. So if the project was 7.8 million, that would be how the language would be worded. And at that point, staff, if there were any grant applications that were available or coming forward, we would also apply for those. And if we were successful, let's say a $3 million grant, we would then not borrow that $3 million. We would just use the grant funding. But
Good. I wanted to hear that. Thank you. Councillor Holmes and then Councillor Barkwell.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the two can work in parallel. We can continue looking for grants, but I don't think we should delay doing this, because while we look for grants, we had an opportunity to apply for an active transport, for the extra transport portion some time ago, and we chose not to. We decided to apply for another project instead. But so those opportunities are there. But I'll be voting against the motion on the floor for the reasons that Councillor Barkwell spoke to the first time he spoke. Thanks.
Councillor Barkwell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering if we proceeded sort of along those parallel tracks and we went through the referendum process for whichever option we chose, or the alternative measure process, how long could we sit around waiting to see if we got a grant before having to make that decision to go without a grant?
Through the mayor, theoretically, council could sit for as long as you wanted. Quite frank. Well, let me rephrase that. Council could sit on it for a little bit. Public assent would have been already approved, so the public would have already approved the project from a debt borrowing perspective. So, knowing full well that the concept was to borrow 100% of the funding. So if council then decided to wait 6 months, I would need to confirm with our corporate officer as to if there's any legislation from that perspective. But historically, I've seen debt borrowing bylaws that have gone up to a maximum amount, and they've been over a couple of years as the project's going on, drawn down on. So the bylaw sets the max that we can borrow, and then if we're working on a project, we can draw down. It doesn't necessarily mean we use all the funds.
So an active transportation grant application that was successful would automatically draw down on that. Right. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Haven't been privy to sitting through like a referendum and or a alternative, whatever you call that. Is it unheard of to throw both options out in a vote, like, and the public says, yes, I want the full meal deal of option A, or no, I'm only going to vote on option B? I have no clue. I have no idea. I just wanted to ask the question publicly, and maybe I'm embarrassed to ask it. I don't know.
Through the mayor, I have never seen that approach taken. I've always, in the debt borrowings that I've been a part of, it's either been through either an alternative approval process or through a referendum. I've never seen both at the same time.
No,
or the question of, do you want to borrow one as opposed to another?
Exactly.
What sometimes happen there is there can be some confusion in regards to how someone needs to answer the question, and the questions need to be extremely specific. So I have not seen that.
I don't think I had anyone down, so I'll go to Councillor Traynor.
So with option A, do we need to add something in there that we would like staff to continue looking for grants while the process is going on, or is that something that you would do anyway?
Yeah, through the mayor, we're always looking at any grants that we could have for the district, and then would quite often bring some options to council for them to make the decision on which grant we apply for, or which project we apply for any given grant.
Okay, so if this is approved, it would still be on the books that we could continue to look for something to help pay for this.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Councillor Barkwell.
One thing that sort of bothers me in the back of my mind about this parallel process is that would the grant funders look and see, oh, well, the city's already approved the full funding for this, so they don't need our money. Do they look at that at all?
Graham.
Well, one example that comes to my mind, and I'm kind of looking at Dave to verify my recollection of this, but Eisentalk Dam Council identified the budget, I think it was 1.8 million to do the outlet pipe out of necessity, public safety and requirements for dam safety. And then the grant came in, and you know, in the end, that project cost escalated, and we had to put another 600,000. But it didn't seem to matter in that case. So I don't think there's always line of sight from those senior governments, and certainly, you know, if council was to go with the recommendation that's on the floor, we would remain vigilant on any and all grant opportunities to try and do something similar. Am I remembering that right on Eisentalk Dam, Dave?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, I'm all for doing a parallel process and trying to get a grant, but I think I wouldn't want to wait around too long, because then we'll just end up with, you know, $3 million cost overruns, and and what's the point, right? So I think it'd be great if we get a grant, but otherwise, you know, let's just do it. But
Okay, ready for the question then? All in favor? And opposed? So that is defeated. So do you want to go on to, is there someone that would like to bring forward a different motion? We have 4 minutes. Councillor Holmes.
Yes, I'll bring forward a motion that we do the full project from Harris to Gartrell only, and the pulverized paving of the existing width from Gartrell to Hillborn.
You're seconding, Councillor Barkwell? Did you want to say something?
Just to clarify, Madam Mayor, does that also include the $2 million of the other works?
Yes.
I have a question as well, and I guess this is for Joe. So if we look at the Harris Road to Gartrell, or Gartrell Road, 5.4 million, right? And then the alternate road option for just the Giant's Head to Hillborn, that's an additional $1 million. Am I reading that right?
Are you looking
So
at table one?
the full meal deal for option B, and then the addition of the alternate road option for, just a minute, I messed up here. What's the alternate road option cost for Giant's Head to Hillborn? That's,
It would be about $400,000 plus or minus.
okay, so then the total of what is on the floor now would be 5.8 million.
Approximately, yes.
Okay, thank you. So further discussion on this option? Oh, Graham. And then Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't mean to include myself in the discussion, but I have more of a question to Joe, which is just with the existing width of that section from Gartrell to Hillborn, is it still possible to do that bike lane on there, or would that not be feasible with the existing width?
Through the mayor, we would be repaving that stretch of road using the pulverized method. It wouldn't be as wide as the full project, so we wouldn't have the room for the bike lane along there. No, that's a shared from Gartrell to Hillborn is the shared road section, so it wasn't its own bike path by itself. It was more the share the lane type bike path where it's a slightly wider driving surface. When you pulverize, you have to basically replace with exactly the same width of road that you have there. So no, it wouldn't have the cycling component on there. They would be in with the rest of traffic.
So then it excludes the whole Trails of the Okanagan and using that as a, secure bike path?
Correct. It would be the full trail from Harris to Gartrell.
Right.
And then it would just be essentially sharing a local road with, for the remainder, that 600, or whatever the length is from Giant's Head through to Hillborn. So that would be sharing the road for that stretch.
Okay. I'm definitely not voting in favor of this one. Councillor Carlson and then Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. So on this one, I'm just wondering if we would go to borrow $5.9 million, but when it comes to continuing to apply for grants, can we apply for the full 7.7? Is that something that we would have to have a resolution on? Is that something that would even work? Because it wouldn't make sense, I think, to apply for just the smaller portion if the money is available for the full project.
Through the chair, I don't see why we could not apply for the full program, for the full Giant's Head to all the way up to Hillborn on a grant, even though council has decided, or maybe deciding, to only do a portion of a project. The grant itself would be deemed as an entirely different project.
Okay, Councillor Holmes, then Councillor Van Elfen, then Councillor Trainer.
Thank you. Just to confirm that the full project is sees a separated pathway just until Gartrell Road, but between Gartrell Road and Hillborn, it would just be a shoulder, the shoulder that the bike lane would be. Is that correct?
That's correct. If Greg can put the screen back up, I can show you a quick cross section of it if you'd like. And it's slide 9.
While you're doing that, Councillor Trainer has just pointed out that we're past 4:30. So another resolution? No time for that? Councillor Van Elfen.
4:45, I gotta get home.
Can you manage 4:45? Can you manage 4:45 with your kidlets? Yeah. That gives us another 12 minutes and then we're done. Oh, so it's on the road or on the screen there.
Yes, so this would be the stretch from Gartrell Road to Hillborn Street. So as you'll see, there's the lane of traffic, and then there's a 1.5 meter paved shoulder that the cyclists would use, as opposed to the slide previous. There it is. This is Harris to Gartrell, where it's an actual separated path that's utilized. So that stretch is slightly different. There's a little less right of way.
Okay, next, Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just going back to what Councillor Carlson was saying. So if we go with this resolution, but we actively keep continuing to look for grant funding, if if a grant came available for $2 or $3 million, then we could go ahead and do the whole project. Is that where you're kind of going with that? That's, it's very interesting. I'd be willing to look at that, but just to keep our options open that if some grant funding does come available, then we do the full meal deal. I don't know if anybody else has appetite towards that. What do you think?
I do, especially when half of that 2 million can come from the active transportation grant. Okay. Councillor Trainer. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Council. Just a couple of short things now. Kendra, for the council meeting schedule.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So before council is the 2022 council meeting schedule.
Does anybody see anything that's, Councillor Barkwell?
Why is there no second meeting in October?
Because there's an election.
Oh, well, we got to go to election already?
Yeah.
So you got to cancel a meeting? Oh. Yeah.
Not sure why December 25th isn't shown as a stat holiday, but that's neither here nor there. Oh, I suppose, yeah, absolutely. And the 27th replaces that, right? So anything else? Okay, could I have someone bring forward the motion, please, to thank you, Councillor Holmes and Van Elfen, all in favor? Thank you. And then on to fees and charges amendment bylaw. This is simply for adoption. Kendra?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So like you said, this is before council for adoption. It received its first 3 readings at the November 8th meeting.
Thank you. Could someone, Councillor Van Elfen and Councillor, I'm going to go to this side of the room, Councillor Patton, all in favor? Great. And 8 minutes left for public media comment opportunity. Anyone? Could you please use the hand sanitizer that's beside you, please? Thank you.
Yeah, you say that road between Hillborn and Gartrell isn't very well used, but you have 3 wineries out there, and it's heavily used in the summer as well. So I just wanted you to be cognizant of that. Thank you.
Short and sweet. Okay, there's nobody on the line. Right, okay, adjournment, please. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Trainer, all in favor? Great, see you at 6.